Let's try that again. Welcome in everybody to our latest live video. Today it is the 30th of November, 2024. It's Saturday. This is Small Business Saturday. There's Cyber Monday, there's Black Friday, and then the lesser known, unfortunately for me, Small Business Saturday, which is a holiday created by American Express. I think that was about 14 years ago, as I recall, or as I recently heard, one or the other. I can't remember if I heard it or I remembered it. But think about small businesses today, because this is a day to draw attention to your locally owned businesses around you and support them this time of year. Of course, Cyber Monday's coming up, and like many other channels are telling you all about the Black Friday deals. I like to do that on other days besides Black Friday. As you'll see, I try not to do what everybody else is doing. So if everybody's going to spend Friday talking about all the Black Friday deals, we did that on Monday. And then throughout the week, as we see more and more deals cropping up between now and the holidays, we will make you aware of them. Or if you see any, please let us be aware of them. Let us know in the comments below the video. We were kind of rushed out yesterday. Things ran a bit long, and I had another thing I had to do. And then as a result of that, I didn't get to say thank you again to our friends who had contributed in Super Chats, and the Amazon gift card, which was from Mark Gaines and from, hold on, let me pull it up. It was Mark Gaines who sent us an Amazon gift card. Now, I know we had received an Amazon gift card from Charlie Purdy as well as a Super Chat. And there was one other one. It was a PayPal contribution. And, you know, at the end of the broadcast, I like to reiterate and say thank you again, because it's because of the generosity of our community that we're able to make these videos. And, in fact, I did a little research on this motherboard last night because I was a little intrigued by some of the things I wasn't quite sure of. And I almost never do that. $10 from G.I. Pollock. So, yeah, thank you guys for all of your support, all of your kindness. We appreciate you more than you can possibly know. And last night when I did research on this board, I wanted to find out what the little rubber feet were for. In the box, there were little bags of little rubber feet. And it said SSD. It turns out if you have a single-sided SSD, which means you have an NVMe drive that only has chips on the top and not on the bottom, smaller capacities, that just gives it extra support. You don't even have to use it, so don't care about that. The little rubber protection that's on the CPU lever, was that supposed to come off? Yes, it's supposed to come off because it can block or make difficult the installation of the cooler. It's just there for protection and shipping. So if you ever see that little rubber piece over your CPU lever, remove it. The 4 M.2s I verified are Gen 4 on this board, so I went ahead and ordered, you know, we don't have a big budget, so I ordered 4 1 terabyte Fanxiang S880s. They're a Black Friday deal for about $63 a piece. And what we're going to do is we're going to put these 4 NVMe drives into RAID 0, and with transfer speeds of around 7,000 megabytes per second per drive times 4, minus some overhead, I think we should get about 25,000 megabytes per second as our D drive, not our boot drive. This is the right way to do it, folks. When you activate the two bottom, when you populate the two bottom NVMe's down here at the bottom of the motherboard, it does disable the bottom PCIe slot. You have so many lanes, and you can use the lanes for this, or you can use the lanes for that. No differently than if we populate this with a Gen 5, I think our PCI Express slot drops to ×8. I'm not sure. This board supports something called bifurcation, which we've never needed to use. But the idea is that if you wanted to add even more NVMe drives or things like that, you can actually pair 2 NVMe add-in cards together and combine them both by splitting the bandwidth and have one big RAID array out of it that does, you know, an amazing amount of speed. And this will do bifurcation, I believe if you got 16 here, then it would be 8 plus 4 plus 4. I don't know too much more about that, as I've never really had any use for it. But whenever like a while back, I had that High Point, is it High Point? Add-in RAID card. And I just couldn't seem to figure out how to get the speed out of it I was supposed to get. And it may be the CPU I was using just didn't support the amount of lanes I needed, right? I was pulling my hair out and I just kind of set it aside. That's still sitting here. One of these days I'll get back to it, and maybe a more modern motherboard with that in there will perform the way I'm expecting it to, which again should have been around 25,000 megabytes per second, thereabouts. And I was only getting about half of that. So somewhere along the line, I'm only getting half the bandwidth on whatever board I was using to test it with. So that is another project to be revisited at some point. I ordered a power supply for this, and I was trying to make up my mind what to order. And I thought, you know, ASUS has been so kind in sending us the board and cooler and the case that we should make this as much of an ASUS build as possible to show them the support right back that they're showing us. And I don't know if I've ever used an ASUS power supply. There is no such ProArt power supply. It's just regular ROG, or sometimes they have them named after like Loki and Thor. And I thought, if we put a video card in this, like a high-end video card, we're going to want, say, 850 watts. And because this is such a high-end build, I'd say 1,000 watts. So I went on to Amazon last night, and I was looking at ASUS power supplies to get a price. And the TUF, the ASUS TUF series power supplies, are available at 1,000 watts. But I want to share with you what I found, because this is a limited time deal, and I want to show you and share it with you. If I can just click the right button, here it is here. So this power supply is 1,000 watt, gold rated, 80 plus power efficiency. And it does include the two 8-pin CPU power connectors this board has, even though we don't necessarily need both. As I've proven, it works fine with one. It's got it. I just want to do it right. And I thought, you know, 155 is a little bit more than some, like I think Corsair has a 1000 that's on sale for like 120. But when I scroll down, where is it? Right over here. It says saved with used like new at $123. And this is fulfilled by Amazon, and they have 16 of them still left. So what I did is I ordered two. I ordered one for this build and one to go on a shelf for a future high-end build that may need a 1,000 watt power supply. And unlike other 1,000 watt power supplies, this one doesn't look extraordinarily long. It looks like it's a standard length of a normal power supply. And they mentioned their cables are bendable. So what you can do is you can wrap the cable, supposedly, around the edge of the video card, so it's hugging the video card. Apparently, and the pictures don't show it here, but on ASUS's website, these cables are more like bendable pipe cleaners, the material they're made from. So you can push it up against your video card and it'll stay there. And that makes for a cleaner install. And they're also exceeding the minimum requirement of how hot these cables can get. They're lower than 50 degrees Celsius than what they're allowed. So apparently these are really well made. Again, I've never used one. It does also include that ATX 3.0 graphics card power connector as well. So it's pretty well future-proof for a while. Power supplies don't usually go bad or depreciate in value. I don't know why there's so many that have been returned, but that seems like a bargain all day long. This power supply has a 10-year warranty. So we're good. We're good for a while. That could sit on the shelf for a while. And even though the warranty starts the day you buy it, we could sit it on the shelf for a few years and it would still be under warranty. I love that. Now, I will check these because they're coming from Amazon warehouse. If there are any problems or missing parts, I can send it back. I mean, right now, returns are good until February, I think. So we have plenty of time to return it for free if there's anything we don't like about it. Even if we just changed our mind. Amazon's fine with that. They don't care. So I just wanted to share that with you. And again, looking at the Fanxiang, the 1 terabyte Gen 4 that does 7,300 megabytes per second, I should say up to, $64. So we got 4 of those. And when those come in, we're going to go ahead and configure the RAID 0 on this as our D drive. But the reason I wanted to pick this up today is I didn't really get as far along in part 1 as I really wanted to get, which includes installing Windows and testing the speed of our Gen 5 drive to verify we're getting 14,500 or really close to that, as well as testing this cooler by running Cinebench R23, which also gives us some performance benchmarks on the chip, along with those temperature settings and how the cooler is running and how loud the cooler may or may not get. And finally, the other reason I wanted to make today's video was as I was updating the BIOS, some friends in chat said, you know, there's a new BIOS out. So after the show, I went to see when the BIOS came out and how I missed it. It came out the same day as the show. Literally yesterday, the new BIOS came out. And when I was flashing or updating the BIOS in this, initially, if you recall, when I went into the BIOS and I pointed it to my flash drive, it didn't find anything. And I realized it was looking for a .zip, a zip file. And I thought, oh, that's new. Normally, I have to extract. Like, when I say normally, I mean, until today, until yesterday, I have always had to extract. It doesn't matter if it's ASUS or any other motherboard manufacturer. Extract the BIOS file onto a flash drive. Well, it looks like this BIOS, and maybe new BIOSes moving forward, you can just download the zip file, don't extract it, put the whole zip file on the flash, and then update the BIOS, and it'll pull it out of the zip file. It'll extract it out of the zip file in the process. Is that how it works? Well, we have a reason to find out because, well, I showed you the regular BIOS update process yesterday. I am very curious about this new BIOS update process. And besides, we have a new BIOS. We went from version 800 to version 1000, which literally came out yesterday. So I didn't feel too bad like I was slacking or missing something. Doesn't get much fresher than that. Let me jump over to the chat and say hello to everybody. Let's see, where am I? I am over here, and the chat is over there. Here we go. All right. There's our friend Buster saying hello. I just saw his name go by. Good to see you, Buster. As always, my friend. Michael Sayer says hello, and Christian joining us from Tennessee says hello. Johnny Weld, Eddie Casanova, Bajan Guy, Mark Baggett, and Richard DeFries. Richard joins us from Ireland. Matthew Burden saying hello, as well as David Graham and Mark Gaines. Oh, we're just talking about Mark Gaines. Mark joins us from Northern Ireland. Michael Lavelle says hello, as does Scott. Peter Leghawk with a 10-pound Super Chat contribution says, good evening, Carrie and Mara and everyone in the chat. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where the temperature in Edinburgh is 56 degrees Fahrenheit or 13 degrees Celsius. Hey, it's warming up over there already. He was down in the 30s last we spoke to him. Then it was in the 40s. Today it's in the mid-50s. That's not too terrible. A little chilly, not terrible. Luke Greenia says hello from Vermont. Let's see, we got Scott in the chat room and Matt, as well as Jonathan. John Williams joins us, says hello. Doman 2000 says hello from the Netherlands. Arcade Jackpot Master says hello. Rick Lakes joining us from Minnesota, popping in and saying hello. Well, hopefully he's staying. He's not just popping in. Doug, Ann, and Carlos say hello. There's our friend Planet Cryos with a $2 super chat, who posted a new video today of a build. I guess he's beginning with a mini ITX build. I do not like to work on mini ITX builds. They're sharp as heck, man, but, well, I'll enjoy watching you do it. Quite frankly, you don't see mini ITX builds here because they are often very tiny cases, and the space you have to work in is, well, he knows, but I'm telling the rest of you, can be quite challenging. Matt wants to know, what flash drive did you use? I have been using these discounted flash drives from Amazon that have been working amazingly well universally on all motherboards. Some of the cheaper Some of the cheap flash drives aren't recognized by some motherboards, and we've experienced that here on the channel live in the past. And then some of the really expensive ones, if they're too large in capacity, may not be seen by older motherboards. So the ones I'm using are from a company called SamData, not SanDisk or Samsung, but SamData. And what I picked up is really inexpensive. They're smaller flash drives. Let's see if I can find them here. They're like 8 gigs a piece. They run about $4 each, $4 or $5. Let me see if I can find it. If we go back over to our window capture here. These, despite being a no-name brand, look, they're not fast. They're just USB 2. But that makes them universally compatible with BIOS flashback. They've got a little LED, at least certain colors do. The black one, I believe, does, and the white one. So I like to have the LED so I can see, like on BIOS flashback, is the drive reading or writing? Is it just sitting there? You know, who knows? Now they do have these, or at least when I ordered them, in a 5-pack. And so let's see, here's a 3-pack of 32 gig. I definitely wouldn't want to use anything larger than 32 gig on a BIOS update because your BIOS may not see the drive. But I do look for that name SamData. So this is SamData here. And I would look for the 8 gig ones. And the 8 gig ones are great for bootable disks, like for Acronis Rescue USB drives, Windows installation drives, memtest drives. Like I like to have separate flash drives for my tools. I only have about 3 or 4 tools, so I don't need Ventoy and to make it all complicated. I mean, you can get a 20-pack of these things. Well, that may not be, this may not be SamData. Just because they look alike, don't assume they're the same. You definitely want to look for the name brand if you want the reassurance that I'm giving you. I'm not saying those other drives won't work. I don't know. But I do know these SamData drives were the only drives I found at this price point that did work. Here's 100 32 gig flash drives that work out to $2.93 a piece. Wow, this stuff is getting so dirt cheap. These are 64. See, that's, in my opinion, too big. 32 gig 2-pack for $7.19. 32 is pretty large. Finding the 8 gig ones is almost getting more and more difficult. These ones just say 8 gig and it's from a company called East Bull. Are they the same? They look the same. I just don't know. I haven't tested them. Enfrain is another. Who's heard of them? If I had tested Enfame and they worked, I'd tell you. But I haven't tested them, so I don't know. But if you see that name SamData, sometimes you can go to the SamData store. Let's see. Yeah, right here. Visit the SamData store. And there was a 5-pack just like this, one of each color. Some have LEDs, some don't. $12.79, I think that's it. Okay, they're 16 gig. Mine might be 16 gig. That's way overkill for boot drives, rescue disks, and BIOS flashes, but it's not so big that even on older motherboards you should have any problem seeing them. Because you want these formatted in FAT32, both on new boards and old boards, just if you just want it to work, right? That's your safest bet. Your board may work with other formats, but almost universally they will all see FAT32. And once you hit 32 gigs in size, I don't think you can format it in FAT32 anymore. Maybe you can, but regardless, these are what you see me using. And it looks like the 8 gig ones they don't make anymore. The 32 gig ones are still available, and then they have 128. But remember, moving 128 gigs over USB 2.0, pack a sandwich, right? So that's the other benefit. Who cares if it's USB 2.0? If the size is small, it's never going to take you that long to fill it anyway. But the minute you start getting, 32, 64, or even 128 gig, and you want to copy 100 gigs to it, it's going to take you close to an hour. So I wouldn't do that. I would use a higher speed and likely higher capacity flash drive, like from SanDisk, in a USB 3 port. So these are my utility flash drives that I use, and the reason why I don't want to spend a lot of money on them is I'm going to put a lot of wear and tear on these. I'm going to be very sort of hard on them. I might toss them aside, and I don't care. They're so inexpensive. They work out to about $3 a piece. What do I care? I spent $3 on a soda at the fast food restaurant the other day, just for the soda. So spending $3 on these, if I get at least, I don't know, a dozen uses out of them. And by the way, none of them have died. I'm just saying, if they should have any issue at all, if the piece breaks off, I just throw it in the trash. It's, you know, recycle bin, whatever, and then just go ahead, and I still have 4 more left. But as time goes on, right, if you're watching this video in 2028, 2029, 16 gig flash drives may be hard to come by because they actually get more expensive to make them at smaller capacities. It's all a process of scale. So if the manufacturers who make the chips aren't making 16 gig chips anymore because they're not profitable, then they just fade out of the market. That's why you don't find many 1 gig flash drives or 512 meg flash drives. I have 512 meg flash drives because I bought them many, many years ago. Today, maybe AliExpress, something sketchy, you could still find them, but I wouldn't trust them. Anyway, that'll hopefully answer your question, and thank you for asking. Let's go back over to camera 1 again and switch back over to my chat room. And Mara says she added a link to the flash drives to our video description below the video. Thank you, Mara. Doman 2000 says, always get flash drives with activity LEDs. I'm willing to forego the activity LED in exchange for high performance because they're getting less and less common. A lot of flash drives, modern flash drives today, don't have the LEDs. And if they do, you often pay a little bit more for it. If I can get one with an LED, I absolutely prefer it, but especially for a BIOS update, especially for BIOS flashback where you're completely blind to what's going on. At least if I can see the light blinking, I know something's working, and I know it's done when the light either stays on or it goes off. Different flash drives behave differently. But if it's blinking, it's working, and don't interrupt it. Scott says hello. There's Marcus joining us from South Germany. Welcome in, Marcus and Scott. Good to see you guys. Jamal31 checking in from New Jersey. Right on. Alash Depej with a 23-month. He's now a member for 23 months. That is so awesome. We were just talking about you the other day, Alash. We hadn't seen you in a while. Good to see you're doing well. And what is this? Oh, I got a friend calling me. He should know better. I was live on YouTube when you called. I had no idea. Well, it's so nice to know such a close friend. Just give my friends a hard time. Chris Manning says, what do I think about computers made by Apple? You must be new here. All right, let's see what other questions we have. Welcome in, by the way. You can go back through our video library, and it's a topic we don't often talk about because we're just not interested. However, there's plenty of other channels about Mac. One I strongly recommend is called SamTime, S-A-M, and time, you know, like a clock, T-I-M-E, one word. Great channel. Guy does great work. All right, so I just want to pick up, as I mentioned, where we left off yesterday, which is, at this point, we need to, I'm going to update the BIOS, trying it with a flash drive, a zip file on a flash drive. Then we'll install Windows 11. Then we'll do the Crystal Disk Mark test to see our performance. Well, we're going to have to download updates and drivers, right? We'll have to wait and see what's left over. We can use ASUS Armory Crate to automate all of that for us. And we do have a fast internet connection here, so it shouldn't be too terrible. And then Cinebench R23 to test the whole cooler out and just get some benchmark numbers on this. That's our plan for today. And let me at least get it started. So I need to hook some cables up. And we're going to start by making sure our power supply is off. And then we'll go ahead and give it some power here. And I need my keyboard and mouse, so I'll grab the dongle here. And we'll just plug it in anywhere back here. I need an HDMI cable, but no internet at this point. So my HDMI cable, since we're using onboard video, that may change. I don't know yet. I haven't made up my mind. Like I say, I only just now got the power supply ordered, and hopefully I'll get it middle of next week. And then we also have the RAID to set up later. And I think once all that's done, then we'll move it into the case, I think. So if everything arrives on time, we will potentially put this in a case on Friday. You may have to wait till the Friday after that. We are just buried in work. But I have to tell you now, even without any RGB, which Mara is big on, she really wants this to be her workstation. The computer she's using is the big helicopter build we did with the 10900K. And she feels like it's a bit sluggish, but it's got RGB puke, rainbow puke all over it. And she loves that. This is going to have none of it. So this will be a very interesting twist. But as long as it's getting used, and believe me, she's going to use it. So we'll have to see on our long-term review how she feels about it after she's had it for a while. In the meantime, her old helicopter will come back up on the bench. We're going to rip that 10900 out. We're going to put in something else modern, 13th, 14th gen, maybe even an Ultra 7. I'm not sure yet. Maybe an AMD 9850X3D when they come out. I just don't know, but that's how far ahead we're thinking with the channel. Frankie B with a $5 super chat. Hey, Frankie, good to see you, my friend. Thank you for your super chat contribution. Kurt Schlegel joins us and says hello. Evan says hello. And Ghostly Lurker says hello. He's laughing at helicopter. Thermaltake makes an Apache helicopter themed case, or they used to. And it is a beast. It is monstrous. And you look at it, it definitely looks like a helicopter. It looks like the cockpit of an Apache helicopter. Google it. All right, let's turn this on. Let's go over to camera 2. And what I'll do, I'll put myself in the corner for right now. I will end up probably shutting this camera here off so we can see the whole BIOS screen. But let's just make sure everything's the way we left it. Turn the power supply on, hit the power button. I should have, yeah, got to turn power on. Oh, you know what else I need to do? I need to put the flash drive in. There we go. Flash drive right here. And when this initializes, we should see something on the screen there. But in the meantime, while we're waiting, I'll just put the flash drive in now. And here we go. Now there's no operating system on this. The drive that we installed, the Gen 5 Crucial T705, is not formatted or partitioned. So it should just go right into the BIOS since it has nothing to boot to. And the BIOS looks right this time, so the previous BIOS update must have fixed the video sync issue that I was experiencing through my capture card, but you would never experience it through your own monitor. It's just a capture card's a bit older, and it looks like they added some older compatibility for that video output in the previous BIOS update we just did. So now that there's a newer BIOS update, if we look here on the screen, let me go full screen on my side so I can see it the way you do. Grab a mouse, and it says version 0806 up here, and now we're at version like 1000 something. So what I'm going to do is the same process as before. We're going to click on advanced, and then I'm going to go to tool over here, and then the easy flash for utility is what I want. And notice it sees a zip file. Let me go back. I'm going to say no for a second. It sees a .zip file, and that's decided down here, right, where you can look for the cap file. And when you download it from ASUS, this is what you download. And normally I extract that, and I would suppose that's the technical side of a BIOS update, is understanding what a zip file is and how to extract it. Well, apparently it appears, and this is the first I've seen this, you no longer need to extract the zip file. You literally download it from ASUS right onto your flash drive, and then you just select it. And then of course we don't have BitLocker or anything because we haven't even formatted our drive yet. So we're going to say yes. Do you want to read this file? Yes. And I guess it unzips it. It finds the contents of the zip file. It's 1101. Now it says date 1125, but if you look on the ASUS website, it was released on 1129, literally yesterday from, if you're watching this live. So yeah, that's what we want. And off it goes, no differently than any other BIOS update, except we didn't have to extract it. Now, why hasn't it been like this all along? So I'm very happy to see that. So much about this ASUS motherboard has impressed me. And of course, Mara, for her to be willing to give up the RGB to have this level of performance and elegance, really shows that it's not that you have to pick one or the other, but sometimes one is not really appropriate or necessary if you have the other. Why spend the extra money if you don't have to, especially if you're the only one looking at it, right? However, to each their own. It's your money. You're welcome to spend it however you want to. I think this motherboard is it's more expensive because you're getting so much more. The ease of use with which you can install your NVMe drives is absolutely, it's so different and it's so welcome. Just because it's different doesn't automatically make it better. In this case, it is different and it is better, way better. It is by far the single best method I have seen to install M.2 drives toollessly. There's no struggle putting the heatsink back on and lining it up, as you've seen me do with other manufacturers, which are also toolless, but sometimes be a little fidgety with getting them lined up right to snap back into place. These are much more solid heat sinks. They just go on, they align very easily, they click in, it's effortless. When you saw me struggling with the Leon Lee build, you didn't see me struggle at all. Not with the cooler install, like I did with Leon Lee's cooler in case. You didn't see me struggle with anything on this build yesterday. This build was smooth as butter. No surprises, no frustrations. And I've never seen metal case fans before or cooler fans. The mounting mechanism was very easy for the water block. Well, if you've missed yesterday's show, be sure and watch it because this thing went together so easily. And so if you're wondering why does a motherboard cost that much, the other thing I noticed was that the motherboard is actually cheaper buying direct from ASUS than the price we saw at Amazon. I think Amazon had this at $529, and if you go to asus.com, you can buy it direct for there for $489, at least today, the 11th of November 2024. That's current pricing. So it's under $500 at ASUS. Now, if you look at an MSI Meg Z890, you're at about $1,000 for that board. Suddenly, this one doesn't seem like it's so expensive. Suddenly, this one starts to feel like a bargain. Also, the liquid cooler with the metal fans was cheaper than that Leon Lee cooler that I struggled with that didn't come with metal fans, but they had all the fancy RGB, and they had the snap together, where the fans connect together so you don't have to run cables. But the way ASUS has applied the cables on this cooler, they're really short and just connect together effortlessly. It's like basically the same thing. So yeah, if you missed that, be sure and watch part 1 because that assembly process shows you don't need that fan snapping together deal. Or if they're going to do that, that's fine, but if they're charging a $50 price premium for that feature, I'd rather save the $50 and just hook short cables up to each other as we did here. Anyway, just my opinion and my observation so far on the build. Now it says no signal on the screen because the BIOS has rebooted. We stay hands off during this process because we want the BIOS to finish. We don't know that it's finished yet. So as the machine reboots, it may continue, or it may take us right back in the BIOS. Or it does this, it gives us an error that there's been some settings changed. That means the BIOS update is done, and it wants us to press F1. So we'll hit F1. And then of course, it'll take us back into the BIOS since there's nothing to boot to. And now you can see up at the top, we're at BIOS 1101. There's our Cole Ultra 9 285K. Everything looks happy. I'm happy. Let's go ahead and take the, well, first let's go back to camera 1 here. I'm going to take my flash drive out. This flash drive can be erased. I always like to use blank flash drives when I do BIOS flashes so that I don't have any difficulty locating the BIOS file. There's only one file on here. It's really hard to screw it up. Once you've updated the BIOS, you don't need this file ever again for the rest of your life. You just delete it. And I always like to have one blank flash drive for anything I might need. This is our guy right here. And you'll mostly see this for updates on BIOSes for any motherboard. New or old, doesn't matter if it's Dell or, in fact, a lot of the integrated the system integrators rather, they'll do their BIOS updates right through Windows. We don't even have Windows put on here yet. And my preference is that I do this BIOS update before Windows goes on. It may be, half of one, 6 dozen of the other, or half a dozen, or 6 or half dozen. I need my Windows 11. I have a video that shows you how to make a Windows 11 installation media direct from Microsoft. It's completely free. You only need the license code if you want to activate it. But Windows will run in trial mode forever. And the only thing it won't let you do essentially is any personalization, like change your wallpaper or just personalization stuff. Otherwise, it doesn't have a time limit. It doesn't prevent you from running any software. So you don't even have to activate Windows 7, 10, or 11, even 8. They just run. You get a watermark after a certain period of time telling you to activate your Windows. And if you don't mind that, you can ignore it. If you do want to activate Windows, our friends at SCD Keys have a discount for you. And you can buy a Windows 10 Pro key and use that key to activate Windows 11 Pro while Windows 10 is still supported. As far as I know, until October of next year, you can spend less money to buy the Windows 10 Pro key. You don't need to install Windows 10. You just need the key. And you use it to activate your Windows 11 Pro install. And it activates and it stays activated, tied to the motherboard for the life of the board. So after the free upgrade goes away, you're still, whatever you did before, you're grandfathered in. So you won't be affected by that. It's just a way to save a few bucks. If you feel better spending a few more dollars on the Windows 11 Pro key, well, they sell those there too for a couple dollars more. We have a discount code. Everything is in the video description below the video for our links. Just trying to save you a little money, right? It's not a commission-based sale. I just want you to know it's there because I hate for people to spend more money for something than they needed to. I was raised in the 80s, Gen X. We never had any money, so I have PTSD when it comes to that. I'm always trying to make my money go as far as I possibly can. There is never been an abundance of that in my family, so I try to make it last. Okay, let's go to, let's see, what do we want to do? We've got our Windows 11 flash drive. What I want to do after I've updated the BIOS is simply load the BIOS defaults. So one more time, I'm going to go back here in the BIOS. And just looking at the screen together, we can see it says default is F5. So we don't know what the BIOS update may have changed. So we want to be sure to set our defaults back to factory, which they already should be, but this just verifies that. It won't hurt us if it's already that way. And don't worry about the date and time being wrong. This is the date and time of the factory where the motherboard, well, no, I take that back. It's way off. That's a month off. But it's okay to be a month off. I advise you to leave it alone. Go ahead and install Windows. And when you connect Windows to the internet, it will sync with the internet time and date. As long as you're within 2 or 3 years, you really shouldn't have to worry about it. The reason I advise you not to adjust it is people make mistakes and make the date far worse because they don't realize they fat-fingered something. And it's completely unnecessary anyway, since it'll happen automatically once Windows is installed and connected to the internet. You're just wasting your time. Setting your time is wasting your time. Yeah, I should make a t-shirt. Now let's save and exit, which is probably F10. It's pretty universal. F10. And it says I've not made any changes. Good. We're going to reboot. Now, just by plugging the flash drive in that has Windows 11 on it, that is the only bootable device on the system. So without having to adjust the BIOS and specifically tell it I want to boot to my flash drive, that's something you do later after Windows is installed when you want to boot to a flash drive. But the flash drive is the only bootable thing on the system. So the system by default, if you just leave it alone, it's going to try and boot to any internal drive first. Our internal drive is brand new. It has no format. It has no operating system. Then it'll try and boot to USB. It'll try all different areas to boot before it fails and gives us a BIOS screen or an error screen. So just leave it alone, reset it, and hands off. And you'll see our Windows 11 installation media is going to start all by itself without us adjusting the time, without us adjusting the boot order. Just leave it alone if you want it to work right the first time, and it will self-adjust all by itself. The minute you go in and you start taking control of it, you are taking it out of automatic mode and putting it in manual, essentially. So if you want to just enjoy your drive in your car with your automatic transmission, it's very relaxing and the car shifts for you. If you want a manual transmission where you can redline your engine and blow it up because you want to select your gears manually, because you think that's more fun, don't let me get in your way. For everybody else, this is what we need to do. Now, I can already tell my capture card still has a problem because I cannot see where to hit OK. It's not on the screen. And again, this is not a problem with the video output. This is a problem with my capture card. The older my capture card gets, the more likely I'm going to, keep having these issues, working on the latest and greatest. Right? This is the latest CPU with the latest motherboard on an 8-year-old capture card. This is just going to get worse. So that I'm going to have to upgrade the capture card at some point when I've had enough of this. But thankfully, I still work on enough older stuff or stuff that has older compatibility. This hasn't gotten to a point of annoyance for me to replace a $900 capture card. Now, I already know all I have to do is hit enter on my keyboard anyway, and hit enter again. And I don't need to see the bottom because I've done this so many times. I'm going to hit enter. And right here, I'm going to select I don't have a product key. If you have a product key, don't install it yet. But make sure that you install a version of Windows that your product key is for. Don't install Windows 11 Home if your product key is for Windows 10 or 11 Pro. That won't work. If you buy a Windows or have a Windows 10 or 11 Pro key, don't try and use it on Windows 11 Home. It ain't going to work. And we essentially just use one of these two options, Home or Pro. I don't think there's any advantage to having Pro. However, the price difference, if you go to SCD keys and you look at the price of the Home version versus the Pro, it's like $2. If you already have the Home version of Windows 10 or 11, I think you're actually better off, honestly, because of the new security features that were added to Windows 11 24H2 Pro. Security features that, I've shown how to re-enable your guest fallback account that Microsoft has turned off. And that's the way it's going to be going forward. But the Home version is not affected by that. So anyway, I highly recommend that if you're going to buy the key, spend the extra $2, even when you probably will have no benefit whatsoever to have Windows 11 Pro. You'll never need it because you've already, if you need it, you won't need it if you've already got it. Likely you will never need it. Okay, so we're going to go with Windows 11 Pro for the financial reason. Now we've got our license agreement, right? Typical thing, and there's an agreement somewhere down at the bottom of the page, which I don't know if I can fake this. In other words, I don't know where the checkbox is. It's down here something. Maybe I just hit enter. Is that working? Space bar and then enter. Boy, nothing's working for me. I cannot see the whole screen. Tab, enter. Tab, enter. That apparently was the way to go. Doing this blind, I've done this a lot. If I can, I think I took myself back. All right, one more time. Enter. And now this license agreement, do I hit space bar and then enter? No, that's not working. Tab 3 times. Tab, 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 enter. That seems to be the magic one. No, that took me back again. All right, one more time. I'm going to try this by heart. Normally, I just click the mouse, but I'm doing this with the keyboard since I can't see the whole screen. Let's go tab, spacebar. No. Tab, spacebar. No. Tab, spacebar. I think that worked. tab, spacebar. There you go. Now we have to figure out where we want Windows installed. And Windows 11 24H2, which is what we're installing, kind of displays this part of the install a little differently than what we're accustomed to. Now, all of these partitions, ignore them. What we're looking at is the disks. So we have a disk 1 with 4 partitions and a disk 0 that says unallocated. That is our internal T705 that has never been used. That's why it's unallocated, unused. It's 1.8 terabytes. The drive is a 2 terabyte drive, so that makes sense. What is disk 1? That is our Windows 11 installation media. And this is why I recommend you don't plug in any additional drives while you're building your computer, because you could get really easily confused to see a ton of partitions. If we had 3 or 4 drives, this thing could go on for page, it'll scroll for a while. And then how can you be sure which disk is disk 0? If we have 2 Samsung 970s and they're both brand new, how do I know which one I want to install on? Or what if I have existing data on a data drive? What if I accidentally install my Windows on that? It's foolish, in my opinion. There is no benefit for you to install anything other than your main drive at this point of your build. You're working harder than you need to work for no benefit and only risk. We only have 2 drives to choose from. This is really easy for me to not make a mistake. Once we get Windows installed and everything's working, then we can shut the computer off and add our extra drives at that point. I would not be setting up a RAID array right now. That won't happen until after Windows is installed, our updates are downloaded, and our drivers are installed. Then I would add the drives and configure the RAID. It's just going to keep your life far less frustrating to just follow these processes, because if we do it all now, it didn't benefit us. Even if it works without a problem, we're not saving any time. We're just offering opportunities for confusion and mistakes. So we're going to select that, and it's going to verify it's ready to install. Hit enter. Okay. You can see the box that we are on currently. So when I hit enter, because I can't see the OK button that's down here, we'll just hit tab and enter, I think. No? Tab, enter. Okay. Tab, enter. Found it. I really got to do something with the capture card. In the meantime, we winged it, and that's how you do it. Let me go back to camera 1 up in the corner here so we can see each other, or you can see me. And then let me jump over to the chat room while we're waiting and see what you guys are saying. Now again, the video sync issue, you would never experience that on a computer monitor. You likely would never experience that on a television, unless it's really, really old. And this is what happens when you insist on keeping old hardware and then you're buying brand new stuff. Even the HDMI cables have different versions. So if you bought a brand new machine and you want to use it on your 10-year-old computer monitor, because hey, there's nothing wrong with it, you might find your video doesn't display properly or at all. And it may be because of the old HDMI cable you're using. And those who aren't educated, they scratch their head as though this is some kind of mystery, and it's not a mystery at all. There's a reason why HDMI cables have version numbers. So is it your HDMI cable that's no longer compatible with the latest hardware, or is it your monitor? And you're just going to have to experiment with that to see. If you don't want to deal with this stuff, monitors are cheaper than ever before. And if you've got the money to buy a brand new machine and you have any issues with your monitor, I would recommend not wasting any time. Just get yourself a nice new monitor. Even if there's nothing wrong with your old ones, a newer one is always going to look brighter and sharper, and you don't know how much difference there is until you see it in your house the way, and you'll say, oh man, this is so much better than what I had. But ignorance is bliss. If you've never had it, you don't miss it. And if your old monitor works and you're happy with it, have at it. But the minute you have to diagnose a problem, I can guarantee you the vast majority of problems coming from people buying new computers is they're trying to use older stuff that came off the old computer. Keyboards, mice, monitors, external drive, anything old that you're holding on to and then putting onto something brand new will always be a source of frustration. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to have the frustration right away, but it's coming. The older things are not necessarily 100% compatible with the newer things. And even if they are, they slow the whole thing down. Like if you have an older external hard drive plugged into a super fast USB port, what's the point? You can buy faster, larger capacity drives for less than what you probably paid for that drive that's 10 years old. And then your system won't boot one day. And I'm going to get a support email or a call. Hey, Carrie, how come my system won't boot? It was booting fine. Do you have anything plugged into it? No. Well, let me give you an example. Like, do you have an external hard drive? Oh, yeah. Is it old? Well, I've had it a while. Do me a favor, unplug it from the back of the computer. Okay, now turn the computer on. Does it work? Oh, yeah. Why'd it do that? I'll give you three guesses, and the first two won't count, all right? It's old. That's why I need to be replaced. I'm getting old too. Luckily, I think I'm still compatible. All right, just want to get that out of the way. As a technician, I just have to share with you common reasons why people call so that you can avoid that pitfall, or at least if you have that pitfall, you know exactly why. So you're not left in a mystery going, oh, when did this happen? It's working fine before. Keep old hardware with old hardware. Keep your old monitor with your old system. When you replace your new system, unless you bought a really super nice monitor, but usually it's people buying the cheapest thing they could buy 10 years ago, and they're still trying to use it today, and then they wonder why it doesn't work with the brand new machine they just bought. It's just all the time. It's driving me, if you can't tell. What happened to Kerry? Oh, he's in IT. Oh. People refuse to believe it. My monitor was working fine. It's not the monitor. It's the new hardware mixed with the old hardware. Well, it's still a monitor. Communication's different, and that's why we're seeing issues now with my capture card. It's just not syncing to some systems. And we've seen this before, and we're starting to see it more frequently. And at some point, I will have enough. But it's so expensive to replace it, I'm putting it off. But at least I can explain it. Now, I'm going to remove our Windows 11 installation video. Oh, no. Yeah, I can remove that. Because after our first reboot, we don't need this anymore. And then we go through our final setup here. And let me jump back over to, let's turn off camera 1 for a second so we can see the whole screen. And you can see the screen still doesn't quite look right. But nothing, when we install drivers, that driver should fix all this. United States, yes. Keyboard, yes, is US. We don't want an additional language keyboard. We do not want to connect to a network, and unfortunately, I can't seem to, oh boy, I can't see the screen down below. So what is this? Tab, enter, tab, no, wrong keyboard, Carrie. Hold on, I'm using the wrong keyboard. Is it tab, enter? Yes, and then I'll put a username of, What username do you want, Mara? Marlena. She wants Marlena. And then we'll set it without a password. She can create her own password later, or she could even create a whole new user account with a different name. It's not a big deal. Nothing I'm doing here is permanent. Now, privacy settings, I don't know that I can scroll down through this. Oh, I can. Okay, so we want location on, but everything else is off. Just have a little tiny screen here, as it's not in the proper resolution. Well, the computer is, the capture card is just not syncing with it right. All right, hit accept. And you see how big like just a moment is? That's because the resolution is being translated much too low. The drivers will fix this universally. It's just when running the default stuff. The default stuff is getting so fancy now that the old capture card is having trouble communicating with it because the standards have changed. The standard of communication has changed. And this is what happens when you hold on to old hardware, as I've already sort of reiterated, and I hope I'm beating a dead horse because I want to drive that point home to you. You can keep using all the old stuff to save a nickel. I hope your time is worth nothing. Paul Howe joins us and says hello. There's more Taunt 1210 and Jason Wyrick saying hello, and Dustin Fuller. Welcome in, everybody. Good to see y'all. And we'll just scroll through here a little bit. Douglas Burchell joining us, along with Old Man 55. Welcome in, gentlemen. And let's just scroll through a little bit. A lot of folks saying hello to one another. I love to see that. I love to see the interaction of the community members with each other. Everybody's getting along. And so here, again, the resolution is still pretty blown up. So what I can do now is I can plug the internet in, but I don't know if our Ethernet drivers have loaded. You see that globe down there? So what I'll do is I'll grab my network cable and we'll plug it in and just see if anything happens. We've got a 10 gig card and a 2.5. So I'm going to try the 2.5 because I think that's more likely going to have a driver. It's quite possible neither one of these network cards is recognized by a Windows 11 default install. And that's okay too. You know, we have a solution for that. So far, I'm not seeing the globe react to me plugging the cable in. So I'm going to unplug the cable and plug it into the 10 gig port. And let's see if that responds. If there is no response, then we don't have the driver. Of course, I can always look in the device manager, but with the screen sort of amplified the way it is, everything's just, it's not scaled properly. So it's making it more difficult. Now, what I do, if you're new here, if you're not new here, you already know what I do. I have a USB to Ethernet cable that does not require third-party drivers. Windows 10 and Windows 11, when you plug this in, they instantly see it with the drivers that Windows 10 and 11 already have from Microsoft. So all I need to do is use this temporarily. I take my Ethernet cable, plug it into my USB adapter. These cost like 12 bucks. There's more expensive ones, but you don't necessarily need them. Plug that in, and Windows will automatically see I plugged in a USB drive, just like a flash drive, and it automatically loads the driver, just like a flash drive. I don't have to provide any driver. Then you'll see that little globe in the bottom right corner becomes that little monitor. We're online now, and you'll see the start menu propagated as a result of that. And then all I need to do is go to our Windows Update, and that will likely load a lot of the drivers we need, and then anything else we can get from ASUS. Yeah, so there's the ASUS driver hub and LAN installation, and we can click yes on that. Let me dump camera one here because we have such little screen to look at. I don't want to cover any of it up. ASUS, in most modern new motherboards on a first Windows install, there's a feature in the UEFI BIOS to offer to install the system utility from the manufacturer of the motherboard. And then that system utility, they have tools like your RGB control software, maybe overclocking tools, system utilities, and drivers. So with the drivers, it's an intelligent driver that will look and see what you have versus what's available, and then offer you, in theory, everything that's missing, and you don't have to go hunting it down. Now you will notice that in this process we have disconnected for some reason. Down here we went back to a globe. I'm not sure why, but I'm just going to be patient and let it work it out. And you could do this lots of different ways. This is just the laziest way. I find it very convenient to just plug a USB adapter in. But if you have a second computer, you can download the drivers directly from ASUS as zip files, put them on your flash drive, and then walk them over to your new computer, plug them in and extract them and load them by hand, the old school, old-fashioned way. You can still do it the old-fashioned way if you want to. Now, I don't know why we've lost our Ethernet. This doesn't make any sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unplug the USB Ethernet adapter, and I'm going to plug it back in again just to see if that resets it. Because nothing it's doing right now that I'm aware of should have caused that driver to be removed. So I want to give the system an opportunity to reset. Oh, this is interesting. We now have a virtual drive that never appeared before. You have been disconnected. Please check your settings. Huh. Let me unplug this one more time, and we'll plug it in to a different USB port. If you ever plug anything in USB and you're not sure if the device or the cable or it's the port, just try a different port first. And if it still doesn't work, try a different computer. And if it's consistently not working, then it's the USB drive or USB device. Autoplay, CD drive. Huh. I wonder if that's part of the USB Ethernet adapter that's doing that. While we're waiting to try and figure out what's going on here, let me go in the device manager. And you can see we have a ton of stuff that Windows doesn't know what any of this is. This is such brand new hardware. Windows has not caught up with it yet. So all of these drivers need to be provided by your motherboard maker. And that's another reason why you don't add any printers or any unnecessary hardware, or this list is only going to get bigger and more confusing. So we only plug in bare essentials until we get this all straightened out, and then we can start adding our peripherals and other third-party items. Like if I had a capture card, I wouldn't be putting that in yet. That would come in long after all of this has been resolved, because when I put the capture card in, mine's a 4-port capture card, I'm going to get 4 more unknown devices. That's going to be overwhelming and confusing to understand which unknown devices are because of me and which unknown devices are part of my new board. The newer the board is, the more unknown devices you're going to have. This is normal and to be expected. What I don't expect, though, is for my little globe to appear here. And what I'm thinking is I'm going to change that Ethernet adapter. I've never seen that happen before, and that's okay. And maybe just a reboot is going to fix this too, by the way. But I'm just going to grab another Ethernet adapter because it's faster than a reboot, and I want to see if that does anything. Yeah, that is working. Interesting. Very interesting. All right, so back to where we were. We'll scroll that down for the ASUS driver hub and hit accept. Yeah, this resolution is very low. Installation is successful. Good, good, good. And we continue to wait here for a moment. Welcome to Microsoft Edge. So obviously it wants to bring up the browser for some reason. Start without my data. Confirm and continue. Look at that. 20 available driver updates. Let's just take a quick look that we're not getting any bloat, that everything is necessary. Yep, yep. Oh, that's good. Good, 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 good. That's good. That's good. That's good. That's also good. Now, software, Armory Crate Installer. This is up to you if you want it. But what I would say here, I don't know how we choose. I guess you could do individual, or it says there were 20 and you can just install all. How do I deselect? Just for now, because I might actually want that Armory Crate later. There should be a way to, like the ProArt Creation First Installer, the Creator Hub. This is all online stuff, but this says download, okay? Where I'm talking about is where it says install. Oh, that's our Realtek USB adapter. Even found that. Oh, that's impressive. That's a very impressive driver locator. I will say, I like this. Devices and drivers about this PC. I wish I could see. Like, I don't want WinRAR. How do I tell it not to install that? USB wattage watcher. That's interesting. Norton 360. Yeah, we definitely do not want this. And the problem is I can't really see how to deselect things here. Because what this is saying, if it says install 20 available updates, I think it's everything that says install, because we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 is all we want. So there's 6 additional items here I don't want, and I can't see where to deselect it. So what I would do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to manually select these. When we get to the video driver, that should solve the vision problem, right? The resolution. So I'm going to start at the top, even though I don't care about the Bluetooth driver. I like to have a system. And we're going to install these manually until I can see the full screen and deselect the other 6 items. Now that I'm installing one, it'll be whatever's remaining. Out of the 14, there'll be 13 left. Look, the video resolution just corrected itself that quickly. That must have happened from Windows updates in the background. Now that's the way the screen's supposed to look, and it is talking to my capture card correctly. Okay, so let me go full screen again over here, because now there should be like a checkbox or something where you can turn on or turn off these other installs. Like, I can see you can close this, but I don't see an option to deselect. Well, that kind of stinks. We were doing so well up until now, because I would just love to hit the one button and say install all, but I don't want anything below the driver line. So where it says software, I want none of this. And I don't see how to deselect it. It just says install. So when you hit install now, everything that says install is going to go. Now, if it says download, that is different. Then that's not included. But anything that says install, install now is going to install with a one click. Well, let's restart it. What the heck? Well, no, let's not. Let's go to the chipset driver, because that's going to want to restart too. Oh, I put the wrong one. I did the dynamic tuning. I really wanted to do that. And I can do that too. Now watch what it does. When we select these manually, they'll take turns. You don't have to sit here and wait like I was doing, which is essentially the same as what it would do if you hit install now. It just clicks all the downloads for you. The problem is I don't want to, as I mentioned, I don't want any of this stuff. If I do want it, I'll come back and get it myself. I don't want to crowd up and bloat up a brand new install, especially not with Norton 360. I'm kind of disappointed to even see that in the list. Company's got to make a buck, you know. What can you do? You just got to be aware, know what to watch for, be patient, and think through the decisions you're making. Because when you take Norton 360 off, it'll still leave remnants of crap in your registry, in your system folders. That is a sloppy piece of software, in my opinion. It's very, very invasive to your system. Hey, there's Doug Betts joining us from Live Windows Training with Doug Betts, another great YouTube channel here. If you enjoy my content, be sure and check out Live Windows Training with Doug Betts. He's usually on before me, and I don't normally do videos on the weekends except during the holiday season. So we had a little overlap today, and I guess he must have wrapped his live video up and has joined us. So welcome in, good to see you. And let me go back to camera 1 so you can see me while we're waiting for this. But you see that video issue was temporary, and even needing the little Ethernet to USB dongle thing is temporary. Once we get the network card drivers installed, we don't need that ever again. I work on a lot of systems here, so buying these for 10 or 12 bucks, totally worth it for me. They really come in handy in diagnostics and in new system builds, especially if you're going to be showcasing the latest and greatest hardware. Anything that's the latest and greatest, you're going to have to provide the drivers. It takes Microsoft a while to get the drivers vetted out and then added to the database and then provided as a download. Maybe next year it'll just happen automatically in Windows Update, but if you want to be first, these are the typical steps you have to take. Nothing unusual here. Nothing to see here, move along. Matthew Burden mentions in the Armory Crate. I kind of like this better because Armory Crate takes a while to install. I don't know why Armory Crate takes so long to install, and we likely will install it. But for today's video, because I'm still trying to get caught up from yesterday, I'm trying to expedite this as much as possible with bare minimums. Let's go ahead and restart now. let those changes take effect. You don't want to install all your drivers. If they require a reboot, it's possible the other drivers you installed don't install correctly because you didn't reboot. It might not. If you want to take the risk on your new build because you think it's faster and you don't need to reboot, the reboot on this takes like 30 seconds, not even, from complete shutdown to restart. I'd say better to be safe than sorry. So when it's offering you the reboot, you'll notice the first time I was kind of on the fence about it, and I'll do one more. And that was based on which driver it was. Because of my experience in the industry, I kind of know which drivers you're okay with and which ones you want to reboot. Like video drivers, you definitely want to reboot after a video driver update because it could screw up your whole screen. And other drivers that install after that may not install correctly because it may say an installation's already in progress. Until you reboot, the installation's not complete. Now here we ran into a new problem. If you see the blue screen that just occurred, we know that that only happened after the driver install. And is it because I installed the 2 drivers before the reboot? Did I just cause that? This re-emphasizes the wonder now that we have. If I would have rebooted after each driver install individually, I could tell you exactly which one caused that blue screen. Now I'm not sure. And this is where overconfidence can get in your own way. Now, whatever caused that seems to have self-healed, and we're going to just pretend like it didn't happen and keep moving on. But from now on, when I see a driver update on the rest of these updates, and they want to reboot, I will reboot it before I do anything else. Then if there's a problem like that again, I know exactly what caused it. You got me? You with me? Let's go back to, well, on my side, I need to go full screen here so I can see again. ASUS downloads. You know, I'm wondering, my capture card says it's set to 4K and it's not a 4K capture card. Is that on me? No. No, it says 1920 by 1080. Weird. I'm going to have to look into this after the show because something is reporting 4K. And that may be part of my issue here with the sync before the drivers, is that it's showing 38. What did it say? Oh, no, that's broadcasting to my monitor at 4K. That's what it's doing. All right, never mind. Misunderstood. Let's go back to where we were here. And let me just get rid of camera 1 so I can see. But I like that this is very similar to Intel's driver updater, that it's basically doing this online at a website right up here versus a third-party piece of software like Armory Crate. Armory Crate's great. I like it. It just takes a while to install. It's the only reason why I'm not putting it on right now. All right, there's our LAN driver. No, here we go. The crash is in memory management. It's possible we have a bad stick of RAM. It's brand new RAM, and it's entirely possible that one of those sticks of RAM is bad. I'm going to show you how we deal with this, but in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and let it reboot. And these kind of events, if they're going to happen, this is when you want them to happen. You don't want to sell the system to a customer this way. You don't want to deploy it to yourself and start reloading all your software. And we're just going to restart my PC. But I'm going to double check that here in a minute. For right now, that's 2 blue screens. Something's happening. And I want to see how frequently these blue screens happen before I overreact. I need to justify what my reaction is. If it's just a fluke, it's still not acceptable, but I don't have to stop everything I'm doing to address it. But if it keeps interrupting us, then I do need to address. And what I would do is just take out a RAM stick and see if it still happens. And if it does, put that RAM stick back in and take out the other one. And then if it still happens, we got something else going on. But let's keep going and let's see if we get interrupted again. And we'll proceed accordingly based on the response that we get from the computer. But don't overreact. Relax. Think it through. Let's try and install the LAN driver again. Usually when you get a memory error, it is literally an error with your memory. Usually, just so you know. It could also be the lack of a driver that's causing this blue screen. It's not common, but it can happen. And especially when you're dealing with this latest bleeding edge technology, it can be very finicky. Especially if you go back and look at our Threadripper build, the original one, it was extraordinarily finicky. Now, I'm not expecting that on the first gen of the new Intel design, what they're calling 15th gen is really a first gen chip. But I am expecting there to be some, well, with any first gen product, I expect there to be some growing pains and that BIOS updates address this. We're going to go ahead and restart now. And you see, we didn't get any blue screen that time. And that's why I think it's probably either one of the memory modules is bad, or there's going to be another BIOS update that addresses memory incompatibility. Because the memory may be perfectly fine, but because the BIOS and the chipset, everything is brand new, it may not be as polished. Well, it's definitely not as polished as if we bought a system from last year's chipset. I just don't know. Could be either one of those. It could be something else, but those would be my first two guesses. But it could also be drivers. That's why I'm insisting on putting all the drivers in first, if I can, if it'll let me, and then see if it happens again. Always do the easy thing first. Don't overthink it. Don't panic. Don't freak out. This is another reason why we don't add any unnecessary hardware to a new build, because for all we know, maybe it's one of those data drives that's failing. Maybe it's something we've plugged into it, like a printer that we don't need yet, that's causing this error. And you are going to run around in circles, frustrated that none of it makes any sense. So this is why we do bare minimums, because if something like this happens, we're only dealing with the bare minimum, which reduces the likelihood. Let me rephrase. First of all, it reduces the likelihood of experiencing this problem. And should this problem occur, the number of items we have to diagnose is there's like 6 items: RAM, storage, motherboard, power supply, CPU, and drivers. That's pretty much all there is. And you should be able to figure that out in under 10 minutes. 10 minutes is all that should take to diagnose. Now, the minute you start slapping a bunch of extra hardware on here and external drives and USB devices, and hey man, you just made your life so complicated. But set your expectation accordingly and do whatever you want. But do know, when the unexpected happens and you didn't follow my advice, it's your bed, you made it, you lay in it. That's all I'm saying. Of course, we're happy to help. If we can, if you're having a computer problem, always feel free to come into the chat and ask. We'll do our best. And by we, I mean myself and this amazing and very intelligent community we have. We'll be happy to help you resolve actual problems you're having. Please don't ask for problems on behalf of other people or things you've seen online. A lot of that is all conjecture, hearsay, and a complete lack of misunderstanding. So, out of respect for our time, we are happy to give you our time to help you specifically for a problem you specifically have. If other people have a problem, let them come in. Don't tell us about it. You tell them about us, and they can come in and join us during a live video, and we will help them and show them the same courtesy. If they can't be bothered, then why should we be bothered? That's all I'm saying, just a little common courtesy. But if you have a problem, any problem at all with your computer, please don't hesitate to pop into our chat room during any live show and ask us about it. A lot of people in our community are more than happy to help and are quite knowledgeable. In many cases, and in many topics, more knowledgeable than I am. It's just an amazing community, and I can't say I can't say enough good about it. You just have to experience it. All right, so with the LAN drivers, now I believe they're loaded. I shouldn't need the USB dongle anymore. It doesn't hurt for me to leave it in there, but I'm just kind of curious. I really am trying to get through these driver updates before it decides to crash, but I don't know how fast I do it. I don't necessarily think I'm under a timer, but like instinctively, I want to hurry up and get it done. But so far, we haven't seen any more of those blue screens. But it may be, if it's bad memory, that we just aren't hitting that part of the memory yet. And it may seem like it's intermittent, when in fact, it's just based on the usage of the machine. So here's the Marvel LAN adapter, which I think is the 10 gig adapter, or Marvel, I think is how they pronounce that. So the other one must have been the 2.5. So once we get this driver installed, that means both LAN drivers will be installed. And you'll see what happened is the web page had a hard time loading for some reason. So let's go back and see what happened here. Now again, if we have a bad stick of RAM, that would explain that. Or if it's installing a LAN driver that's conflicting with the LAN driver we're using, that could also cause it. So you can see we have multiple reasons why certain symptoms appear no differently than maybe you have a cough. And maybe your cough is due to allergies or it's due to illness. Maybe you just drank some water wrong and you're choking a little bit. Maybe you're not coughing, but you're choking. So you can have the same symptoms and have a completely different diagnosis and solution. Same is true with a computer. We have all these possibilities and we go with the easiest, most obvious thing first. Don't start thinking about all these obscure things. Even though they could solve your problem, they're not likely going to be the cause. It's possible. Always go with the most likely easy thing first. It's the best thing I can advise you to do. Now we're going to go ahead and keep going here since it didn't require a reboot after that LAN driver. Planet Cryos with a $5 super chat says, FYI, that ITX build that he's doing with the OCPC mini PC case, which is kind of like a bench open case. Oh, it was very easy and fast to build with no GPU. So it doesn't have any side, I thought it had side panels. Because you didn't build it, right? You just were showing the case off today. I kind of skipped through it looking for where you started putting parts in. I never saw you put the parts in, so I thought you were picking that up on like a part 2. Or was I not paying close enough attention? He says, no, that video, so he finished the build today, and I guess he's going to edit the video and then render it and publish it, and it'll be out next week. Oh, good. Good, because I hate when people skip through my videos and ask me questions that were answered in the video. And I'm like, uh-oh, did I just become that guy? Thankfully, I have not. Well, at least not now. All right, let me just keep an eye on our progress over here. So the Intel Management Engine interface, well, that's a sizable download. I don't know why it's taking so long. No, it's doing something. We're going to let it continue, and so far it hasn't blue screened again, so we'll just see what happens. I'll put camera 1 back up in the meantime. We'll keep an eye on me and on it. Make sure we're both working. Micromanaging. Matthew Burton is telling Planet Krause he just saw the case review before the show, and he can't wait to see what you have in store for that build. I would be remiss also if I didn't mention, for real personal attention to computer problem solving, you can't get better than Doug Bett's live Windows training. It's completely free so long as you do it during a live show, so the whole community benefits. He won't charge you for it. If you want private service, well, you're going to have to pay for private service. But for public service, not only does Doug's community help you, but Doug himself will help you, and he's been a technician for over 30 years, such as myself. And while we don't know everything, and nor do we claim to, we have a lot of experience and more or less can figure things out faster and know the right places to look when we don't know. So one way or another, we should be able to get you your answer. Or the community will. There we go. Now we can reboot. What do we got here? What's the error this time? Well, when this happens, by the way, Windows by default is designed to reboot itself when a blue screen comes up. So if a customer were to call me and say, my computer blue screens, and I say, what's the error on the blue screen? I need to know that. They go, I don't know, it flashed and rebooted. Then we go into the system properties of the machine and we uncheck the box to automatically reboot on error. We disable that. So when the error comes up, it stays until you hit reset, or power the machine off and back on again. And we used to do that a lot in Windows XP. Like that was a standard thing because they would crash so often. Stuff like this doesn't happen very often. So, and again, because it's a new build, there's the error. Now it's staying up. Ah, and it's already gone again. Now I realize if you have a $500 motherboard and a $600 CPU and a $300 cooler, you probably won't find any of this a laughing matter. But if you see machines like this every day for the last 30 years, it's just whatever the latest, it's just this again. It kind of feels, oh, this is no big deal. We always fix it. It's never like, oh, this is just going to be broken forever and I just wasted my money. It's never the case. And in my opinion, when you get stuff like this that happens, that makes for a far better video. I assure you, we'll figure this out. We're not there yet. And there's like this anxiety and panic that people have, and I find that amusing. This is what makes things interesting. And I selected this RAM, and I don't know if, and without doing any research, I just said, that's the RAM I want. It has no RGB on it. I want this build completely clean. And I didn't look for any compatibility, nor should you have to. But on a Generation 1 product, this could be a compatibility issue. On the other hand, we could have a bad RAM module. So one easy way to tell, and since we've been blue screening regularly now, is we turn the power off on the machine, okay? And then we'll go for full screen on camera 1 so you can watch what I'm doing. Now we have these 2 memory modules, and we've never used them before. They're brand new. And it's pretty unusual that we get a bad memory module, but it's possible. So just randomly pick one and take it out. It doesn't matter. It's a 50-50 chance. If one of these modules is bad, chances are both of them are not bad. That would be highly unlikely. If both of them report bad, then it's a compatibility issue that likely a BIOS update would address. So I'm not freaking out. I don't care. It's not a big deal. All this stuff is under warranty. Everything I ordered from Amazon, I have a 30-day return period to just send it back. Or I can contact the RAM manufacturer. I believe the G.SKILL RAM has a lifetime warranty. It just might take 2 or 3 weeks to get the replacement back. And if we order 2, we have to send back 2. This came in a kit of 2. And that means if we send it back to the manufacturer, we're without any RAM for 3 weeks. Thankfully, I have spare RAM and I'll just slap it in there. If it's a RAM problem, which this is the first place I'm going, right? Without running memtest, because that can take an hour and a half, I can have this answered in 5 minutes if I stop talking about it and start doing it. You could run memtest to verify your findings, but just to actually do it is much faster than to talk about it, doing it. Sit there and say, you know, let's run memtest for an hour and a half. No, let's just take the RAM chip out and see what the big deal is. But let's go back over to camera 2. Actually, you know what? Let's turn camera 1 back on and just put it back in the corner. Now the machine will run with 1 RAM stick in any of these slots. The specific slots that they recommend you use are there for performance. So it may not even make that much of a difference, but they didn't just randomly tell you what slot to play. But for testing, it doesn't matter. We're not worried about performance. We just want it to run without error, blue screening. So with just, a 50-50 chance, if we have a bad RAM module, just pick one and do it with the power supply off or unplugged. Don't do that when the system is just off, because it's not really off. As long as your power supply is powered up, or at least has power to it, there's voltage running through this board. And you can see sparks. And that will definitely justify a panic attack on your new build that you spent a lot of money on. So now let me go full screen on my side here. And so far so good, but it was running fine prior to this before anyway. Let's see what other drivers we've got remaining. This should, yeah, so there's the management engine. That's where we were before. Let's go ahead and put that in. And then just the Realtek audio driver, which includes the audio app. A lot of people will download just their driver and not realize they're missing the app that gives them so much more functionality with their audio. And maybe they don't need it. But if you never had it or you don't notice, you never noticed it before, There's additional functionality with the app when it comes to your sound card. So yes, if you only download the sound card driver, your sound card works. But when you start to get to know the app, you have all kinds of bells, whistles, and features you might actually want. That is the app you have to get from the manufacturer, if it's ASMedia, Realtek, Sound Blaster, whoever. So just so you know. Did I buy computer parts on Black Friday? They've been running Black Friday specials throughout the entire month of November, which was very confusing for me. They were pre-Black Friday specials. They weren't upcoming specials on Black Friday. They were now. And so there were a number of things that Amazon had on Black Friday. But I wasn't too excited about most of the deals because I get pretty good prices throughout the year. So what if I save $15 on a $300 item? It's really not that big of a deal, unless I need it. On the other hand, if these are the pre-Black Friday deals, what happens on Black Friday? Well, some items sell out. So I mentioned the 8 terabyte Western Digital drive, the NVMe drive, Gen 4, 7,200 megabytes per second, which was $900. Then it went to $700, then it went to $600, then it went to $550. And I thought, I wonder if it could go to $499. Maybe on Black Friday it'll go to $499. It's completely sold out. So I missed the boat. I don't need it. I would have only bought it because it was a good deal. It's a complete waste of money for me to buy it. On the other hand, maybe they'll replenish stock on Cyber Monday and it will go to $499. Or maybe it'll just continue to be sold out. I don't know, and that's the risk you take. If I need something, I get it. The power supply I ordered for this last night, which was technically Black Friday, was just a returned power supply. It was not on sale, and it was cheaper than any other on sale power supply at that wattage from ASUS. I could have bought that any time of the year for that price. It's a great price. So I think there's a misconception that Black Friday prices are always better, when in fact, these products that they're offering you on Black Friday are the same products they've been offering you all year. There's nothing new here. And sometimes the prices are temporarily inflated just prior so that they can offer you a bigger discount and say, this was $250 when it never sold at $250. And now we're going to give you a 50% off, so now it's $125. And you're like, oh my gosh, that's half price, I got to buy it. When all throughout the year it was like $150 and they're only taking $15 off. I mean, $15 is $15, don't get me wrong. But unless I absolutely need it, I'm not going to buy it just because it's on sale. So no, the 1 terabyte drives I ordered for this yesterday as well, that was Black Friday. They were on sale for $63, but how much do you think they normally cost? $65? I mean, so what? So I didn't buy because it was Black Friday. It just happened the parts I wanted were either already on sale because they were returned in the case of the power supplies, or were slightly discounted, but I was going to buy them anyway. Didn't matter. I already made my mind up. I wanted the 2 Fanxiang S880 1 terabytes. So unless they were overpriced, it really didn't matter. They could have been $59.99, $63, $65, who cares? Now, if I'm buying 10 or 20 of them, that's a pretty big price difference. But just to buy 4 of them, I need to continue the build. I don't have the luxury of waiting to save $8. Like, I need it now. I need it ASAP so we can finish the build. And it was a good price. It wasn't like they were giving them away. The savings was minimal. I'm interested to see if any good deals come up on Cyber Monday. Now, if sales are not good this year, if the economy is so bad that companies just aren't moving stuff, then we're going to see even more sales as we approach Christmas as companies get desperate to unload inventory. I don't think Western Digital has that problem with the 8 terabyte drives. They sold those out at $550 a piece. Those were a good price. And I was like, I don't know how many people have $550 to spend on an 8 terabyte drive. Well, apparently well over 1,000 based on how many were sold on Amazon. And people still want to buy it because it's sold out, right? They didn't have enough. Should I have bought it at $550? I don't know yet. Maybe they're artificially holding back inventory so they can reintroduce it again on Cyber Monday at $4.99. Or maybe it just never comes back in stock until January or February, back at $650 or more. Don't know. Did you get anything on Black Friday? Any of you? Anything good? Any good deals? So far, our blue screen hasn't reoccurred, but it's intermittent, so it's a little too early to tell. But you can see it's not really affecting system performance. Each one of these sticks, I think, is 48 gigs, so just one stick of RAM is probably more than you have in your system. By today's standards, it's overkill. I think I got 48 gigs, didn't I? Yeah. So 2 times 48 is a total of 96. And you'll see, I mean, 48 on a single stick on a modern system is crazy fast. And putting twice as much in doesn't make it any faster. Dual channel makes it a little faster. If I put a plate of food in front of you that's more than you can eat, and then I give you a second and third plate, you're not any hungrier, it's wasted. That's what happens with RAM. You're only using so much. Anything you buy and install above and beyond that can only invite problems because it's not going to provide any benefits for you. So you need to determine how much RAM you're actually using. You can hit Control-Alt-Delete, go to the Task Manager, monitor your RAM usage, and you'll know if you wasted your money. If you bought 64 gigs of RAM and you're never using more than 20, that all of that extra you paid for, you might as well have flushed that money down the toilet. Just gone and wasted based on an illusion that you thought more was better. 2 aspirin for a headache is great, but the whole bottle, not so much. 5 quarts of oil in an average car is pretty much what you need. 10 or 15 quarts, probably going to break your car. You think you need more money? The minute you get more money, you're going to have a lot more problems. So I can't think of one thing in life where you get more of it without consequences. You can have too little and you can have too much. And right down the middle is where I try and stay. All right, so this should be our final, as far as driver updates go. There shouldn't be any more waiting for us, and I can go to Windows Update. I want to take the USB to Ethernet dongle off of here, and I'm just going to plug it into one of our built-in ports, and that should work now if I orient it in the right direction. And I'll just set these aside for next time. Great that they never expire, you know, something to have in a drawer. If you're a fix-it-yourself kind of person, which I think most of you are, having a tool like that is profoundly useful, especially if you're helping friends with their systems or family members. Can't say enough good about it. Let's go to full screen on camera 2 over here for me. We'll go back over to the ASUS Driver Hub. And just for drivers, I like this better than Armory Crate because you don't have to install and wait for the install of all the software for Aura and all the other stuff you get with the ASUS Armory Crate. I'll do that later, but right now, I don't need that right now. In fact, I don't need any of this other stuff yet. But I'll likely install the ProArt Creator Hub. I don't think the USB wattage watcher is necessary. And we're just going to go to Windows Update at this point. This is Windows 11 24H2, and we won't even activate it, again, for the same reason. What if the problem is a bad motherboard that's causing these blue screens? It's possible, not likely, but what if we come to that conclusion and we've already paid for a license that's tied to the motherboard? When we send the motherboard back to the manufacturer, the motherboard manufacturer sends us a new one. They don't fix these anymore. You just get a new one. Say bye-bye to your Windows license because it's tied to your motherboard forever. Luckily, they're cheap. I could buy 10 Windows licenses. No, I could buy more than 10. I could buy about 15 Windows licenses for the cost Microsoft wants for one retail license that you can move from one motherboard to another, but can only have installed on one motherboard at a time. I would have to buy and install the Windows license from SCD keys 15 times before justifying the overpriced version from Microsoft that can be moved. It's still cheaper to move it yourself and buy a new license, by far, by more than 80%, than buying the more expensive license and then being able to have that option to move it. But it's your money, you do you. Let me check our power settings while I'm over here. I want to get rid of this silly little icon, so I'll type in, the way we do that is I type in search permissions. Got to type it right, search permissions. And we scroll all the way to the bottom where it says more settings, and we turn that off. And then we'll go to Windows Update. Oh, we were already there. Then we'll go to Edit Power Plan. I want to make sure the system won't go to sleep on us while we're live. Yeah, see, I don't want that display turning off. We'll say 3 hours, and the computer doesn't run on batteries. This is just dumb. Sleep mode is to save batteries. So I'm going to say never and save changes. And those are just a couple modifications I make on every system. If you watch my past videos, sometimes I forget to do this. And then we go to, computers doing Windows updates. We talk about something, we go back and we have the no signal screen. Uh-oh. Well, no, the system just went to sleep, or the monitor went to sleep. And it's not something we want happening during a live show. So these are all options for you to configure the way you like. Now, once we have everything solid and working, one of the very last things, I mean last thing, like I will have this in the case, I will have the cable management done, I will make sure everything is exactly the way it should, I will run tests on it, make sure the cooling's working, and the very last thing I do is I go buy my Windows product key, and then I activate it, and then we're good. People try to just do everything at once, and you got to think about it like a recipe. You have to think about, you put your dry ingredients in, then you add your wet ingredient, and there's a reason why there's an order to it. And if you just want to slap it all together, it likely isn't going to come out as good. So if you're okay with doing what we call half-ass work, have at it. But if you want to take pride and you want to do it the way a professional would do it, you break it into segments. And that way, if there's any problem in each segment, you address it before moving to the next segment. It is a garage mechanic idea to sit there and just slap everything on at once. Like, I'm going to build this entire engine, I'm going to put it in the car, I'm going to attach all of the accessories that don't need to be attached, and then I'm going to start it for the first time. And guess what? If it doesn't start, you're going to be taking all that back off again, potentially. And it's just going to make you work harder. You're awfully optimistic if you think you can slap it all together and have it work the first time. And maybe you're right, but that's not a gamble I can take at scale. If I got one computer and it doesn't matter when it gets done, I can do it any way I want to. But I have 2 more systems to build after this, and I haven't finished the previous 3 that we started. So at some point, I have to just let it go and move on to something else, and then come back to it later when I have time. If you ain't got nothing but time, and that's how you want to spend it and squander it, it's just not the way a professional can sustainably run a business. So if you're wondering why I do things the way I do it, it's coming from that perspective, not from the hobbyist perspective. And it's not just a feeling or an emotional, but it's a very logical reason. It's called pressure and making money. Now, this is a channel build. This is not going to a customer. And we'll evaluate it by having it in Mara's hands and have her use it and rely on it every day. And if it has any problems, we run into any issues, we'll keep you updated on it. And then from that point, we can tell you for sure, what it's like living with, and if it's been a pleasure or a pain. If I thought it would be a pain, I wouldn't even bother. Like, I would just sell it. But I really, this is one of the best systems we've ever built here, especially for the money. In fact, while we're waiting, mentioning that, let's go back over to Amazon right quick. Let me go back to my Amazon page here. Turn on my window capture, turn that off, turn that off. So while that's updating, let's take a look at this board, right? This is the ASUS ProArt Z890 Creator Wi-Fi, which on Amazon is $529.49, right? If we go to ASUS and look up the Z890 ProArt Wi-Fi, $489.99 from ASUS. And I'm wondering if the reason for that, if ASUS is selling this board on Amazon, then they have to pay Amazon a commission. And it may be that in order for ASUS to maintain the profit margin at $489.99, if that's the slimmest profit margin they can sell it at, then anything Amazon is charging them as a commission, because it was sold through Amazon, is then added to the price, which looks like about $40. That sounds about right to me. It's like sometimes when you pay with a credit card, there's a credit card processing fee because the credit card's taking that fee from the merchant. So if you're buying a $100 item and your credit card is charging the merchant 2 or 3% fee, that's $2 or $3. A lot of times merchants will eat that fee, sometimes they don't. That you don't get that fee on a debit card, and you don't get that fee paying cash. So the merchant selling you something for $100 that you pay $100 cash, the merchant makes more money than if you use your credit card. You also, as a consumer, get protections using your credit card that you don't get with cash. So in every way, it hurts the merchant. It comes at the merchant's expense, but sometimes merchants do add that processing fee onto the bill. If I had to guess, and I don't know, but I'm guessing that's why there's a price discrepancy. Okay, back to camera 2 and camera 1, and let's see what you're talking about in the chat room here. Looking to see what good deals you guys might have got this Black Friday, or even this month, really. Morton said he picked up a Western Digital 4 terabyte from Best Buy. Got a great deal on it, I guess. I don't see a price. Oh, wait a minute. Michael Lavelle said he picked up a 50-inch Insignia TV for $189. Whew, that's cheap for a 50-inch TV. William Lynn said the one issue with soldered on RAM on a laptop is if it fails, you're out of a laptop. The likelihood of soldered on components failing is about 90% less likely than a socketed RAM module. There's no compatibility problems. It is a very rare occurrence for soldered on RAM to ever fail. It almost never happens. When RAM fails, it is almost always socketed RAM. There is no perfect world. There is no absolute solutions. All we're doing is we're improving and improving and improving and reducing the statistical likelihood of a failure. And the RAM is going to be faster when it's soldered on than the RAM that would come in a socket. You'd have to pay more for that RAM. It's cheaper to get the RAM soldered on. It's faster to have the RAM soldered on. And you're less likely going to experience a RAM problem because it's soldered on. Just so you know. So you can say, yeah, but if you have a RAM problem, you ruin the life. The likelihood of you having a RAM problem with soldered on RAM is almost unheard of. It is so rare, people will make YouTube videos demonstrating what it looks like because you likely won't ever see that in your life. But if you're dealing with socketed RAM, well, we've already experienced that here today. So just so you know, soldered on RAM is what you want. You do not want socketed RAM unless you're living 10 years ago. The idea that you would need to upgrade your RAM is silly because at this point now, the hardware is exceeding the needs of the average user. Now, if you're not an average user, these rules don't apply to you because you represent a very tiny minority of computer owners. And you already know what you like, and nothing I tell you is going to change your mind. And that's fine. I'm not making any money if you believe me or you don't, or you say it doesn't apply to you, and it doesn't apply to you. But for the vast majority, and I mean vast majority of computer owners, you definitely want soldered on RAM. I'm telling you, it's fast, super reliable, and cheaper. This idea that I need to upgrade it, you probably will never need to upgrade it. No, it should last as long as the computer will. By the time you need to upgrade that RAM, you need to upgrade the computer. That's the world today. That's what it's become. I don't make the rules. I'm just telling you. All right, now, keep in mind, I make money doing upgrades, and I'm telling you, it doesn't make any sense. We're going to put 96 gigs of RAM into a 32-bit machine that can only take 4. That doesn't make any sense. It's time to replace the whole machine. When I bought my Dell XPS, it has soldered on RAM. My Galaxy Book 4 laptop, Galaxy Book 3, Galaxy Book 5, all soldered on RAM. Pretty much every Apple product soldered on RAM. They make them thinner, they make them cheaper, they make them faster, and they make them more reliable. Welcome to 2024. You're going to see more and more of this. Time to start getting used to it and understanding this benefits you. It is not a problem. If we were to have bad RAM on a laptop, it would likely be exposed within your warranty anyway. So it wouldn't cost you anything. Let me grab a cold Gatorade while we're waiting on the reboot here. And again, if you have any comments, questions, or common misconceptions that come from the old days, I'll be happy to point those out too, just so I can get everybody on speed with current status of why things are done the way they're done. It's not a conspiracy theory. They're not out to get you. It's in your benefit, and you should understand why they're doing it and likely change your attitude to understand it's in your benefit financially, reliability-wise, and all those things we used to do in the old days. We don't have to do those things as much anymore, and this will continue to be a trend going forward. You see, just look at the past, look at the things we used to have to do that we don't do today. It's pretty easy to forget about the defragmentation of hard drives we used to have to do. The reinstallation of Windows every year with Windows XP was pretty much standard and routine. All that's gone now. So keeping up, that's the challenge. It's not the hardware, it's the people. We just got to get people on board. And it's the older people, middle-aged and older, that have this issue. The younger people don't know any better, so they embrace it. And I think sometimes as we get older, we get this disease, I call it a disease, that we don't like change. And all change is bad. And I'm just being honest. If it was bad, I'd tell you. I've never been shy at holding back. This is the way. Matt says he got an MSI MPG 1000 watt power supply for $109. Is that what you picked up? I don't believe ASUS makes a 1000. If you're referring to the power supply I picked, I want this all to be ASUS. As I mentioned, ASUS has been very kind to us. They've been supporting us. We want to support them back. And we're not going to ask ASUS to provide every single thing. We will show them support in the same way we will show you support if you show us support in return. And so I've never used an ASUS power supply. I don't believe I've ever used one. And it'll be a great test of the whole ASUS environment to use that. And that was the cheapest 1000 watt ASUS power supply. I've never used an MSI power supply, and I have no desire to. Now, if MSI wants to start showing us support, but if I'm choosing a power supply for my customers that I'm selling to, that I'm taking liability on, it's going to be EVGA or it's going to be NZXT. It's going to be something I'm familiar with. Once I familiarize myself with the ASUS power supply, I will either gain or lose confidence and then decide if I want to add that to the menu for my customers based on my experience. But my customers will not be my guinea pigs, and I have no reason to take that risk with any other brand, be it MSI or anyone else. ASUS has given us the excuse to explore the entire ASUS line as much as possible and see if there's any cracks in the armor, you know, anywhere along the line. They don't make a ProArt power supply. And it's not to say that MSI power supplies are bad. I don't know, and I don't have any reason to experiment. ASUS gave us a reason. So that's the logic. Matt says he bought it for his MSI Meg Z69. Oh, right on. I wasn't sure what you were referencing, Matt. But yeah, at $109 for 1,000 watts. And then again, being able to pair your power supply manufacturer and your motherboard manufacturer, it's not that important. But sometimes it's just nice to keep everything the way the manufacturer of the motherboard intended it. Not that it's necessary or required. And certainly if the price is there, why wouldn't you? All right, let's go back over to camera 2. Well, it's been that way for you, but not for me. Let me go back to, where's my mouse? We'll hit continue. We'll hit skip. We'll hit, we'll go to back and skip. That gets us through that screen. It won't keep coming up anymore like in 3 days. And we'll go back to Windows Update one more time. Retry all. That's normal. That's a normal process. Like the drivers were already installed, so when it tried to install the drivers from Windows Update, it failed because the drivers were already there. That's not a problem. Here's a big cumulative update preview. We're going to grab every update. Turn that on. I also want to go to advanced options, see if there's anything in here. I turn this on. I turn this on, and I turn this on. It says there's 3 optional updates. Let's see what they are. Oh, back to the drivers. Those might fail, I don't know, but we're going to grab them so one way or another they come off of our list of to-do. I don't need to check which one's newer. It automatically sorts all this out. I just wanted to stop offering it to me either way. One way or another, I'm going to end up with the latest, okay? So that's all that's important to me. Remember, I'm working at scale. I'm working on dozens of computers at a time, and I don't have the time and the luxury of time to sit there and start comparing driver number. It just select it all and go. And I'm telling you that is way faster, way more efficient, and it always works. If on the rare occasion it does cause a problem, I will spend less time overall resolving that one issue than going through each machine trying to avoid a problem. That takes longer than the rarity of a problem occurring and having to solve it. So it's all about time management, expediting, being efficient, and processing as much as possible. Because the more work I get done in a day, the happier my customers are that they got serviced faster, and the more money I can make. If I found that to not be true, if I found that by just blindly selecting everything resulted in quite often having problems that I have to go back and fix, I would not be telling you this. I would be telling you that. So you decide accordingly. Now, we have not blue screened at all since this RAM module's been removed, and I find that quite interesting, and this may be bad. Maybe it wasn't fully seated. Maybe simply reseating it is all I needed to do. A lot of possibilities still remain, but it's feeling very, very solid right now. And again, with 48 gigs of memory, the additional benefit of dual channel at 96 gigs, as you can see in this example, more memory can cause harm. It's not always a good thing. Now, when Mara gets her hands on this, she's likely going to utilize a lot more RAM than an average user. Honestly, don't think she'll exceed 48. She'll argue with me, but the proof is when you hit Control-Alt-Delete and monitor your RAM usage. I'll believe it when I see it. It's very, very rare. But she still wants it. And I still have the pair of RAM, and obviously I paid for it and I want it to work. But because I went so over the top, it's likely this is a consequence of that. If you have one RAM module with 48 gigs of RAM, that's a lot more higher density memory chips that have a lot more that can go wrong than, say, a 16 gig module or a 32 gig module, which isn't as dense. So the more you have that can go wrong. Your likelihood of experiencing a failure is higher the more complex each item is. It's just simple statistics. It doesn't mean it's acceptable, and it doesn't mean it's not fixable. It just means you're more likely to have to deal with it when you start going to these extremes. Just look at the original Threadripper build to understand what I'm talking about. We spent a lot of money on a bleeding edge system that was so finicky. And this could be a bad memory module that could have been damaged in shipping. It could be that I didn't seed it fully, or it could be that there's a compatibility issue in dual channel with this BIOS, given that this is a first generation chip from Intel. And that's the way AMD was with their Ryzen and Zen and Zen Plus chips, had a lot of memory incompatibilities, and there were a lot of BIOS updates. Maybe that's the problem. I don't know yet, but first, because it's working, I want to finish our updates. I want to do our Crystal Disk Mark test. I want to do our Cinebench R23 performance and heat test. And this can wait. This isn't that important right now. It is important, but these other things are more important because these are actually getting something done that matters now in a live video. That doesn't matter right now. As long as we're not blue screening, we can keep moving forward, and we'll come back and look at that if we have time later today. Otherwise, we'll just pick it up another day, or I'll take a look at it off camera and let you know what I find. I may end up not finding anything. If it's a BIOS compatibility, if this passes memtest, and it's going to take a long time to run memtest on 96 gigs of RAM, but if it passes it and it says the memory's fine and it's seated in the socket right, then I just have to, reach out to ASUS and ask, or just wait for a future BIOS update that just might fix it. All of that is possibilities right now, and I'm not interested in possibilities. I want answers, and I can get answers on drive performance and cooler performance and CPU performance right now running these tests. So since I can get those answers now, and this answer may forever be a possibility or indefinitely until, I don't know yet. I do know I can get answers on these things, and that's why I want to focus on those absolutely first. All right. William Lynn said he's using 81% out of 16 gigs of RAM. Yeah, he's not even using all 16 gigs. That's why people have 32. It's usually more than they'll ever use, at least for the life of the computer they're utilizing now. By the time you start needing more RAM, you probably need a whole new machine. All right, so let's go back full screen over here. I'm going to check Windows updates one last time just to make sure we're all fully updated. And then while that updates, oh, you know what? There's still one more update. I wasn't expecting, I thought it was just going to say we're current. So anyway, I've got my utilities flash drive here, and I'm going to plug that in, and we're going to copy over Cinebench and CPU-Z and Crystal Disk, all the usual suspects while we're waiting. So we'll bring up our folder here, go to our USB flash drive. We'll grab Uncle Carrie's Windows 10 Optimizer and VLC, which I'll install later. All the routine stuff you always see me do. And then under PC testing, all this stuff is free. I cannot distribute it, but you guys can Google it and download Crystal Disk Mark Portable. So we don't install any software. We're just running portable. We have HWI, hardware info. We'll copy that over for monitoring temps. And Cinebench R23. And again, all free downloads. You can Google them and download them yourself if you want to compare your system to our system today. Nothing proprietary and nothing that costs you any money. Everything I'm doing, you can do too. And then CPU-Z, just because. Never hurts to have it. And then I'll close that, and I'm going to eject my flash drive. So as I put this away, I'm realizing I've got a little hazard symbol down on our Microsoft Security Center that was hidden from me, which I hate. So I'm going to right-click, go to Taskbar Settings. I'm going to turn these widgets off because I don't like them. I'm going to go to Other System Tray Icons, and I'm going to turn off OneDrive, but I want to turn on Safely Remove like USB devices. I want my Bluetooth icon to be visible. I want Windows Security to always be visible. And I want my Windows Update icon down here always visible. If we go back, that'll take us back to the Windows Update, which is installing. And then you see there's a little hazard down here. So it wants us to log in with a Microsoft account. That's not really a hazard, neither is this. And then here, this is app and browser control. I don't know why this isn't on by default, but you should definitely turn it on. Now this may take a minute. It did immediately go to a green check, but sometimes it may show that yellow hazard, especially on an older system, and you think your changes didn't take effect. You need to be patient, and if you're completely impatient, restart your computer. And when you restart, Windows Security should come up with the green check. It may not happen instantly. That's normal. In this case, it did, but this is also a rocket ship. So just bear that in mind. It's nothing to freak out about. Chris Garrett said, there's a lot of things I don't like about Windows 11. Well, too bad. Don't use it. Nobody makes you use it. Linux would be a great solution for somebody with that attitude. That's definitely a Linux attitude. Windows 11 isn't made to conform to you. You are to conform to it. And if you're not willing to do that, don't use it. There's no argument here. There's no debate. It's personal preference. I don't like asparagus, so I don't eat it. It's very easy. All right, as we boot it back up, now we can run some tests. All right, I think. We should check Windows Update one more time. We're going to go back over here and go to Windows Update, and theoretically and ideally, it's going to say we're all current. All right, we're going to check for updates, and it should be relatively quick here with a response that says we're all current. We'll also, I think we'll run Crystal Disk Mark first, as soon as this comes up as current, assuming that's what it's going to do. Yep, perfect. We're going to close that. We're going to go over to Crystal Disk Mark, which is right here. Let me just drag it over where I can see it a little better. A little double clicky. Now remember, this is a Gen 5 NVMe that is the fastest Gen 5 a consumer can buy on the market today. This drive all by itself should be able to do 14,500 megabytes per second. Gen 3, it's going to be doing 3,600 maximum. Gen 4 will do 7,300, 7,400 maximum. Gen 5, it's still not been fully saturated. It should be able to just keep doubling, so we should be around 15,000 maximum eventually. But by today's standards, the T705 should be able to reach over 14,000 megabytes per second. And the fact that we're a little shy of that here is really only something you can tell with a benchmark. And I don't necessarily know that anything is wrong. What we want to watch for are any heat-related issues. That's my main concern. When you get these Gen 5 drives, they can run very, very hot. If the write speed is significantly slower, like if the write speed's at 5,000 or 1,000, that's telling us the drive is overheating. So I'm hoping to see a write speed that's very similar or very close to the read speed here. And I'm going to let the entire Crystal Disk Mark run so that we get all of the numbers for various I/O. I only care about sequential maximum speeds because I know the drive will never go faster than the maximum speed. Regardless if it's random I/O or sequential, that's irrelevant to me. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in evaluating under perfect case scenario, just like a Wi-Fi router will tell you what its range is, what its distance and coverage is, assuming there's nothing in its way and there's no interference. Best case scenario, it cannot do better than this. That's the number I want to know. And I feel like we're a little bit shy here at 12,300, but I'm not too worried about that. That's a finicky little thing that is just a result of me looking at numbers, right? The system boots up fast, and the difference between 12,000 and 14,000 when it comes to data transfer is almost immeasurable by a human being. You almost need a piece of software to point that out. It's milliseconds. But nonetheless, right, if it's supposed to do 14,000, why am I not getting 14,000? We're close, and I don't really care right now. When we have more time later, we can test it again and see if this was, a consistent number, because this number will always be different every time we test. But at 12,300, that feels more like a T700 than a T705. I put a T705 in this, didn't I? Or did I put a T700? Because a T700 Gen 5 will run at these speeds, and the T705 should run a little bit faster. Now I got to go back and look at what I put in. You are paying extra for that. A T700 is cheaper than a T705, even though, as I mentioned, a human being can't really tell the difference without benchmarks. Now, once this is completed, we'll run Cinebench and we'll see how this cooler is running. We'll also see how loud the cooler can get, and we'll see how well the cooler performs on the chip, and we'll get a performance number on the chip to see how well it performs in Cinebench. If you care about comparing such numbers to other chips, we're going to find out here in just a minute. Looking back in the chat, we'll see if there's other questions I can address. The greeting says, disk error checking is a thing of the past they don't miss. Well, it's not a thing of the past if you're still holding on to those old drives. The older the drive is, and the more resistant you are to let it go, the more likely you're going to be running. Yeah, it's good to embrace modern tech because it's going to free up so much of your time and you're going to have so much less frustration. But again, this is a subject that occurs as people get older. The resistance to change is a disease that comes with age. You don't find this in children. Children love new stuff. Adults, not so much. And if you find yourself not liking things that are new, the problem may not be the things. You just might need an attitude adjustment. Or maybe it's time for you to find other interests that better align with your values. But I can tell you, I've had several calls from customers where the problem was the customer's perspective, and there was nothing wrong with the machine. And it's a difficult topic to point out to somebody because they don't want to hear that. But I wasn't brought up to lie to somebody and tell them what they want to hear. I am not your echo chamber. I'm here to explain and share with you my real world experiences, not spread conjecture about what somebody said or what I read or what I saw online. Unless it's an actual news item coming from an official and trusted source, there's too much of that in society today. There's got to be other things to talk about. That's just gossip. I didn't like it as a teenager, and I like it even less as an adult. Luke Greenia says, I hate change, but I love new tech. Yeah, that's a common thing where people there was an expression, it's not coming to mind right now, where it's basically saying you hate change but you love change. But I just can't remember what the saying was. But that's what it reminds me of. Why does the machine not have a discrete GPU? This would be too early in our build process to add a discrete GPU. So the answer to your question is, as I mentioned earlier, you don't want to add additional hardware to your build until you know your build is solid and it works. If we're getting blue screens, how do I know it's not graphics card drivers? So we're able to quickly diagnose and resolve that. And then once the machine is solid and everything's happy, the graphics card we're going to put in here is the graphics card Mara is using right now. So if you said to me, well, if that's a new car, how come you're not putting tires on it? Because the tires we're putting on it are on the car we're using right now. When we're done.
No.
What do you mean no?
The new 3090 Ti that I have sitting, that's in.
Well, it's in. Let me rephrase.
Yeah.
Let me rephrase. There is a newer graphics card that we put into the build that was supposed to be Mara's. Right. This is getting very confusing. You are correct. The graphic card you got now, I don't know what we're going to do with. That'll go into another build. That's a 3080, right?
Correct.
And the new card that we put into your new system, that
3090 Ti.
Is a 3090 Ti.
Correct.
And that 3090 Ti will come out of that new system once this is ready.
Yep.
meaning it will be in a case. We won't set it up here on the counter
Right.
because then it's really going to get funky. The 3090 Ti will go in this.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
So that, if you watch the channel regularly, this information's already been provided, but I do understand many of you are watching us for the first time, and welcome in. And I hope you'll consider going through our past library so you could be caught up on, we have so many projects going on at one time, even I get confused. So let's go back to, for me, I need to go back to camera 1. So many mice. We'll go full screen over here, and then I'm going to save these results. Full screen for me. Go over here. And we're going to come back and revisit this. But if this is a T700, it's really fast. If it's a T705, it's a little slow. Save image. Crystal Dispark. Once again, if I'm adding a discrete GPU, I will do that at the very end once the system's been mounted in the case. If I have a CPU that has no graphics card, that'd be a different story. I would use a test graphics. I still wouldn't use a massive here on the bench. But I intentionally do not buy CPUs on purpose that don't have graphics cards, because that's a gamer thing, honestly. They're just too much money for our channel to keep dropping $1,000 or $2,000 to satisfy free viewers' curiosities. If our membership increases and if our contributions increase, and we can afford to do that, we will. But a graphics card for this, to buy it individually just to show it to you, would set us back almost the cost. It would pretty much double our investment. But we already have one, and we'll use that one. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this to the desktop, and then we'll run Cinebench. So let's save that. Close this. We're going to bring up our hardware info program here, temperature monitor. Wow, we're already over 2 hours again. Man, I must be getting slower. All right, that's fine. And we're going to go to our temps. Where are we at right now? Oh, we're nice and chilly. Oh, yeah. That is nice and chilly. On an Ultra 9? Are you kidding? Is it going to stay that way? Let's find out. We're going to bring up Cinebench R23. We're going to go ahead and start our single core and then our multi-core, or multi-core and then our single core. Each test takes 10 minutes, and the first 90 seconds of these tests, we will see likely the highest temps in the first 90 seconds. So while that's running, oh, those fans let you know they're running. This thing means business. If I move this over here, I realize my camera's going to cover it. So bear with me for a second. And let me move my camera second. We can move the camera over here. There we go. I think that'll be good. Can you guys hear the fans ramping up and going down? Now, when this is in a case, it'll be quieter, but I'll tell you what, this thing means business. Let me go full screen and see where our temps, like I said, these first 90 seconds, 72. Oh, I see 88. It got as hot as 88 Celsius on our performance core number 12. But that's under.
I cannot believe how loud that is.
Well, I told you when it said these were industrial fans.
Yeah.
They're serious. This is like a jet engine.
Crazy.
Feel how much air they're putting out. Like it's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
But this is only under an extreme load. Most people would never put their computer under this heavy of a load for 10 minutes. And you can hear they go down and they go up. Just like a car's transmission, the car speeds up, the car gets louder. Car slows down, gets a little quieter. It's kind of the same thing. All the airflow is going this way. And again, when it's in the case, it will be quieter, but it's not going to be silent. When you put your foot to the floor in your car, I promise, unless it's an electric car, you're going to hear that be louder than a normal acceleration. If your fans are running this loud all the time, you've either under-purchased, overclocked, or overvolted further than you should have, or you've not installed your cooler properly, or something is wrong with your cooler. But if it only gets loud under processing and then quiets back down, that's normal. Now, how loud it gets depends on each cooler and each fan. But if you notice the word industrial along with the word fan, that means those fans have the potential to spin faster and as such will cool better, but will also be louder and will probably also last longer. If you've ever been in a server room, a lot of people wear ear protection because servers with the cooling systems they run can be very loud. And if you work in there every day, it can cause long-term hearing damage. This is not that, but this is absolutely one of the loudest. On the other hand, we're reaching a 90 degrees Celsius max on an Ultra 9 CPU at stock. That's pretty much getting everything out of it we can get out of it safely. If we want to reduce the performance of the CPU, we can reduce the cooling requirement. But I don't want to give up the performance. I want it to run stock. And it can run at 90, well, even hit 92. That does make me a little nervous at 92. And if we exceed 95, I'm stopping the test because that's too close for me. But if it's just touching 92 and backing away, I'm okay with that. If it's going to hit 92 and stay there, I'm not okay with that. And you can tell by the noise of the fans. When those temps go up, the fans get louder. When the temps come down, the fans come down. It looks like Performance Core 12 is the hot core. I don't know why that core is running so much hotter. Everything else is staying in the 60s and 70s. Now, of course, the efficiency cores, they're going to run cooler because they're not as fast. But that number 12, it's almost like checking car cylinder, pistons, cylinders. If you have a particular cylinder that's running hot, more so than all the other cylinders, like on an 8-cylinder car or a 6-cylinder car, it usually is indicative of something wrong with that particular cylinder. I don't know if that's indicative that we have an issue with Core 12 on this, Ultra 9, or if it's a BIOS update or a patch from Intel that resolves it. I don't know. It's not causing any problems, but it's so far out of whack with everything else. Everything else is it's far behind everything else. Or rather, everything else is far behind it. The next hottest core is the one right next to it, which may be getting some of the bleed over at 86. But then the minute you start getting the cores further apart, you'll realize quickly, if you look at the screen on the right side, that we're seeing temps around 72, 76. This is the maximum temp right down this line. And it's not till you get in this little window right down here, 11, no, not 11. We get to 12, 13, and 14 that are all right next to each other. And you'll see they're kind of heating each other up, with the primary cause of that being number 12. Something's going on here with Core 12. And without another Ultra 9 to test, I can't tell you if that's normal or not. It's too new. Anyway, not hurting anything. It's much higher than I expected. With a cooler like this, I still expected this brand new chip to run maybe in high 80s. But that's why we run the test. This test still has about 3.5 minutes to go before it runs the actual benchmark. This is just literally the warm-up on our multi-core. Then we'll run the same test in single core for another 10 minutes, and that may make the temps even hotter. This is an extreme simulation of extreme resource usage that is not typically reproduced in the real world by consumers. There are people that have legitimate tasks that are this resource intensive for this long. There are very few, though. Nonetheless, it should perform without any sort of thermal throttling. or blue screening crashing because it gets too hot. So long as we stay under 100 degrees Celsius, we're within spec. However, I'm uncomfortable when our ceiling is getting closer and closer to our head. Right? We're not there yet, but we're awfully close. And again, it's not universal across the entire CPU, but it doesn't have to be. Just one core throttling, if it gets too hot, could cause the system to crash. It should start to throttle and slow down. But if it's out of control and it can't throttle enough to keep up, the whole system blue screens. Knowing we have that much room between that and a throttle or blue screen scenario means we're still okay, but we're getting close. And that it's a little too close for comfort for my liking. Gary Tatum suggests that I may not have the cooler completely flat against the CPU. That's entirely possible as well. Or it could be the thermal compound is getting in the way of, like, too much, too little, or a bald spot, anything like that, which we can only uncover by exposing, disassembling the water pump. Not the water pump, but taking the pump off of the top of the CPU and inspecting it. Because if you have a spot that's not touching, you can tell by looking at the thermal compound it hasn't been smushed, or it hasn't been, it'll look different than the rest of it. That's entirely possible. I'm kind of leaning on probably not, because the cooler went on so easy. If I struggled with it or the mounting system was wonky, I'd immediately think that. That doesn't mean I don't have the problem. I just don't suspect it because everything was so smooth. But until we check it, we just don't know. Let's jump back over to, well, for me, I need to see this full screen again. Where are we at? Got 7 seconds, and then the actual benchmark will run. 94. So 94 is our temporary maximum temperature there on Core 12. You can imagine if I would have stuck one of those Luminaire coolers, this thing would have overheated right away. Oh, it got real quiet. Wow, what a difference. And the test is finished, right? 42,058. It's a pretty fair number. Let's go ahead and hit start on the second test. And we're going to start heating up again. So once again, these numbers here on the left, that's our current temperatures right now. The numbers down the middle, these are the minimum temperatures that have been reported while the software's been running, this software. And then what I'm looking at are our maximum, our peak temperatures, the hottest it ever got, even for a millisecond. And you can see that Core 12 is really what we're watching here, where it hit 94. Nothing else even got close. So something about that 12th core, very fascinating to me. It's not broken, and it's not malfunctioning, but that one core is not falling in line with the rest. Everything else runs in the 70s and 80s. There's nothing else in the 90s except Core 12. And that implies to me there's something going on here with Core 12. So why does Core 12 run differently than all the other cores? We don't know yet. But this also doesn't mean we have a bad chip, and it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the computer or the cooler necessarily. If we just use the computer without these benchmarks, we'd never know. If the system were to crash on us randomly and we just can't get it stable, then we could start looking for problems. But here, We're looking for problems and we don't actually have any. It's just making me nervous, and I don't understand why this one core is hotter than all the others. And it could be as simple as just reseating the water block. It could be that easy, reapplying the thermal compound. Maybe the thermal compound I used was a little dry, and using something that's a little more moist might be a solution. That's going to take time. And honestly, we could just leave the system as is and build it, and probably would never have an issue. And yes, if Performance Core 12 was running hotter, it's still within spec. It just bothers me. Why is it so different than all the others? If they were all running universally hot, fine. But when one is running hot and none of the others are, something doesn't seem right, regardless of how important it is. It's just bothers my OCD. That's the best way I could explain it. So we're going to let that test run, and then again, come back over to the chat. Matt wants to know, maybe it's a BIOS adjustment. Quite possibly, yes. When these chips came out, there were a few things in the BIOS that were supposed to be set by default, and through a miscommunication with Intel and their motherboard partners, it didn't happen by default. I just can't remember what those settings are. I think Gamers Nexus went through this when he was first testing the Ultra 7 and Ultra 9 and said, hey, out of the box, these settings are wrong. Now, given that we just updated to a BIOS that came out yesterday, I would think that's been fixed and addressed, but I don't know. I'm making an assumption here. It's very possible the fix is in the BIOS. It's also very possible this block is not sitting completely flat, or the thermal paste we're using is not spread evenly because it's too thick and we need to use something fresher. All of these are possibilities. But it's not critical. It's just interesting and not the way I'm expecting. So that can wait. I'm not too worried about it right now. And then as we gather more information, we'll either figure it out, or it may be a problem that solves itself with future BIOS updates. Anything is possible right now. But nothing is critical. We're fine. I'm more interested in why this RAM module has an issue than the cooler or thermal compound or one core that's not affecting system performance. It's just getting a little hotter. But still, and it's important to remember, it's staying within spec. What I'm focused on is why it is several degrees hotter than everything else. That's all. No downside. It's just, why is it different? When I have that answer, I'll feel better. But I'm not really solving a problem here. I'm looking at something that's different, inexplicably, and I want an explanation. I want an answer, but I don't need it right now. It's not affecting the usage of the computer whatsoever. This, on the other hand, is, right? Follow me? Jack Kugelman said, this is dramatic. No, I'm just making it dramatic. It's really not that big of a deal. It really isn't. It's nice when things go smoothly, but it's also boring and less interesting. The more sort of surprises or unexpected events that occur, I think adds value to your own personal experience. And I think this video is proof of it. If everything went exactly right, it's kind of boring. And anytime you're dealing with bleeding edge, brand new tech, right? We got a brand new motherboard with a brand new chipset, with a brand new CPU, with a brand new platform. Plan for this. If you don't want this, if this is a nightmare to you, stay with the last generation. Any issues have long been resolved. And that's true of any first generation product. That new electric Hummer from GM, I wouldn't buy it. Give it a year. That Ford Bronco, when it came out, it's been over a year now. I think it's safe to buy one. When it comes to CPUs, same thing. These Gen 5 NVMe, they're still pretty new. I'm willing to accept that when I do certain builds. If I'm building for a customer, I will not turn my customers into guinea pigs. I must know the products are reliable, that they're priced of good value, fair price, and that they're available because, quite frankly, all these chips are sold out. So it's going to put me in a pickle if I end up having to sell one to a client and I have to source it, and then if they have to return it or it has to be replaced, I can't get another one. I'd rather sell them something a year old that's still brand new, but all of the polishing has been done. Let the pioneers go first. Let the pioneers get the arrows in their backs and make the path safe for all of us that follow afterwards. You choose if you want to be the pioneer. But choose so with the proper expectations that you'll be encountering problems that you likely won't be able to Google solutions for because it hasn't been published or written yet. If you want to be first, you could start doing the writing to help others behind you. If you don't want to do that and you don't want to suffer the problems, don't buy the latest and greatest. And that's true of anything in life. Let's see how we're doing on our test. I've not been paying attention to our temps. Let me go back full screen. It looks like 94 is still our maximum, which is good. And it's better than 95. It's still within tolerance. And then a minute and 45 left over here on the single core test. And you'll see our current temps, we're down in the 30s right now. That's why the fans are so quiet, even under this load. That's why I'm trying to explain and justify that this kind of simulated experiment is not realistic to the way people use computers. This is extreme. And once again, just like I'm testing the fastest the NVMe can go, right? Not too many people may be doing sequential moves of data. Some people do, but not many people do. So you might say, well, 4K random is more interesting to you, but it isn't to me. I'm not interested in that. And I also want to see how hot can this thing go under a profoundly extreme usage scenario, which is possible that an end user requires, but highly unlikely, especially for 20 full minutes. That's very unusual. If so, I hope that customer has a deeper wallet, because we can fix any of this with more money and more time. So bear in mind, you understand what you're buying. The more extreme it is, the more likely, especially with this, when it's new and it's extreme, you may encounter problems no one's ever had before, and you're on your own to solve them or to communicate with the manufacturers and work with their support so that they can learn from you, update their BIOS or make changes necessary so that those of us who buy afterwards, you've already done all of that for us. So on behalf of all of us, for those of you that do this, we thank you because you paid more for it. You may have waited in line to buy it, and then you suffered through the problems and solutions so that we don't have to. It's true. Someone's got to go first. And if you like to be first, let me step aside and let you buy. I would not sell this to a customer, I want to reiterate this, until it's been out a year, minimum 1 year. Same with Windows 10, same with Windows 11. This has been a consistent thing I've been repeating since 2008. Nothing's changed. It would be interesting, first of all, to find out what the resolution is to the RAM and to find out if we ran this test again after a few more BIOS updates, if it makes any difference. And that means if we would have bought the motherboard later and the BIOS update makes a difference, we would have never encountered this problem, and we'll likely pay less for the parts because newer parts, when they hit the market, they cost more and they sell out. Because a lot of people want to be first and they have the money. Not most people, but a lot of people. That first generation Tesla was a terrible car. I wouldn't want one at any price. Elon even launched his own into space. He didn't even want it. But the Teslas that followed the next generation, Model S, Model 3, far more refined, more reliable, longer battery life, more features, more comfort, better look. Yeah. It's always the same. First generation, expensive. unreliable, or you have some polishing that you're going to be helping the manufacturer in doing. So is this the board? Is it the cooler? Is it the chip? I don't know. There's our final numbers. So 42058 on our multi-core, 2369 on the single core. And we can close this. It's all good. And our maximum temp recorded was just there on core 12, 94. So we're still 6 degrees under the, I think the throttle junction, I think it's 100 degrees Celsius. They might have raised it to 105 on these. Can't remember. Ultra 7, no, Ultra 9, 285K thermal junction. That's a 14700. Oh, they're comparing it to a 14700. Where's our max temps here? No idea. I really was interested in the, well, here's another review. CPU on the Core Ultra 9. Let's go all the way down to the high performance, 285K. Same as us. They hit 94.1. That's with power limits removed. Oh, with power limits removed. So is there a setting in the BIOS that's obvious? I cannot remember what Gamers Nexus said those settings were that were supposed to be set by default. And furthermore, wouldn't they have already been fixed in this update we just did today? And so the mystery continues. So the alternative of those fans not running loud is having higher temps. And we also have software to put on that we can more granularly control that cooler and what mode we want it in, performance mode, quiet mode, etc. But if I just take a quick look here in the BIOS, just briefly, just to see if there's anything obvious. AI overclock, is that turned on? Because that can be a problem. No, it's not enabled. Good. I don't want it to be. We'd have to go under advanced mode, which is down here. And then we'd have to look under the, maybe the AI tweaker. So the Intel default settings are set to performance, and then there's extreme. So we're already at the lower end here. So that's good. That's what we want default. And this is default too. That's also good. At this point, I'm not quite sure what the setting was, but it's not the multi-core enhancement that we had on previous generations. This is different. I think we can enforce all limits. And maybe that's all it is. Maybe it's just pushing it because it can. And in such a case, it's not wrong. It never exceeded the design of the chip. But it's also not default. If they're turning on enhancement, they're pushing it harder. But still within engineering allowed limits. So out of curiosity, with that one change, as we change too many things, we're not going to know. So we're just going to change the multi-core enhancement, turn that off, just let it run stock. And very quickly, within the first 90 seconds of either of those tests from Cinebench, we should know if we're hitting the same 92 or 94, or if we're still staying in the 80s. Could it be that easy? On the other hand, it wasn't running too hot, and you're going to reduce some performance as a result. It's added performance, like bonus performance. So maybe it's worth keeping on since it's not hurting anything. It's getting close to being hurt, but not quite exceeding hurting anything. So let's go back over to hardware info. Let's start that again. Right here, start. And then let's go back to, let's see, close that. I think I need to move Cinebench over here so I don't have this window in the way next time. Let's start that. Close that. Show that. Here we go. So watch that core 12. Yeah, we've already hit 90. So that's not the pro. Well, you know what? Was that on this run? I think it was. Yeah, because the 94 is not there anymore. So it did reset. Yeah, we're already at 88 right now. So that's not the fix. So Gamers Nexus went through a couple of items that were supposed to be set by default from the motherboard makers that Intel said was very clear, that apparently the motherboard makers misunderstood. And it was supposed to be addressed in future BIOS updates. We have a future BIOS update since that video was made. Was it addressed? I don't know. I can't remember what it was called, and I got to go back and see what it was called and go look at our BIOS update, see if it's set right. Once again, if we had adopted this earlier, we wouldn't expect the BIOS to be correct, because when Gamers Nexus video was new, it was accurate. Today, is it still accurate, or have the BIOS updates addressed it? We have to check. Yeah, we've already hit 94 again. So multi-core enhancement has not been hurting us. We definitely want to turn that back on. I'm going to go ahead and stop the test because that's all I needed to know. And we'll shut that down. Give this a second to cool off. And we're going to turn that multi-core enhancement back on. All right, folks, we're at nearly 3 hours on today's video, which is why I wanted to do this video today. When we get the NVMe drives, I'll show you how we turn on the RAID array and configure it, and that will be our D drive, and then we'll run Crystal Disk Mark on that and hopefully see, you know, over 20,000 megabytes per second for a data drive. And then with 10 gig networking into a 10 gig NAS, well, I'm starting to understand why Mara likes this so much. It's going to be fast. All right, let's go back in the BIOS. Let's turn that multi-core enhancement back on. So that's not our, that was the part of the issue from the previous gen. This is a different gen. It's got different issues. Advanced mode is F7. AI tweaker. Multi-core auto. Perfect. And then we're just going to go ahead and save that. Put it back the way it was. You don't want to make too many changes at one time. Again, it's just going to confuse yourself. Now we can run memtest 86 on this, but again, at 96 gigs of RAM, it's going to take a long time to run. It's possible we have a bad memory module. It's possible I didn't have it fully seated in the socket. It's possible there's a memory compatibility issue in dual channel with this BIOS that's addressed through BIOS update. Any of those are possibilities right now. If one RAM module runs through memtest 86 without a problem, and the other module runs through memtest 86 by itself without a problem, we know it's not the module. If that's not true, if one fails and one passes, we know it is the module, and we're still within our 30-day buying period from Amazon, but we're also under warranty from the manufacturer. We may choose to send it back to the manufacturer, which will cost us the cost of postage, or we may choose to send it back to Amazon, which is free returns. In fact, I think the free returns on Amazon are good till February 1st with the holidays. Because, you know, for all they know, I gave this RAM as a gift to somebody on December 25th or holidays that fall around that time. And then Amazon's giving the gift receiver 30 days to return it, which with additional couple days takes us to February 1st. And of course, you can read up from Amazon on what the policy is. I'm just paraphrasing it as I understand it, but I don't work for them and I don't represent them. And sometimes, with the amount of information I deal with daily, without a script, sometimes I remember it wrong. So it's January 31st is the last day, or February 1st is the last day, or it's got to be before February 1st, but certainly not February 2nd. It's all specified. But if you're pushing it that far, I mean, that's on you to wait till the last day. You should know whether or not you're going to return something relatively soon, usually within a couple weeks, not 4 or 5. So we do have that peace of mind, is all I'm trying to say. Let me go back to camera 1 here, and let's see what's going on in the chat room, and we'll wrap it up for today. Move that aside and move this aside for right now. We'll come back to that later. I want to check my phone right quick and see if I've been missing anything. Mortant sent an Amazon gift card of $100. Look at that. He says, here's $100 for the capture card. I mean the channel. I picked up a 4 terabyte Western Digital Black from Best Buy today. Right on, Thomas. That's Thomas, or Mortant1210 in the chat. Thank you so much for your generosity. Capture card, this capture card's $900. So, well, I appreciate the $100. Yeah, I need a lot more of the, but here's the thing. The 4K version of this capture card is, I think it's $1,200. I have to go back and look. I'm not looking to replace that yet. It's still not having the compatibility issues as frequently that would justify replacing it. I'm kind of sticking with the devil I know versus the devil I don't. Because when we switch capture cards, we may have other issues. So for right now, and I know you were joking, but I'm just saying, we're going to keep everything as is until it becomes unbearable because it's expensive. Our friend Buster says, I hope you enjoy this Amazon gift card. Hello, Carrie and Mara, just another little gift. The photo is me cleaning a blocked drain. So our friend Buster worked for the rail system, trains, there in Scotland for his whole career. And he's sharing with us a photo. He's retired now. But here's somebody that actually worked for a living versus me pushing keys on a keyboard. And I guess that's the top of his head. Clearing a drain. That's hard work, man. Thank you so much to our friend Buster, who's always been so generous and kind to us. So much of this content wouldn't exist without him. And he's just a super guy. Regardless of his generosity, he's just very kind. He's been generous even to several viewers. And, you know, doesn't even know them, and he's reached out and helped them. He is a very nice guy. And, well, I give him credit. I also feel very protective of him. You know, I don't want people to take advantage. He's a very intelligent guy and probably not an easy guy to take advantage of to begin with. But, you know, over the years, you know, he was one of the original supporters on the original Threadripper build. His name appears first above anybody else's. And that was what, 6 years ago? He's been with us quite a while. And the generosity over those 6 years is profound. So, you know, he's more or less almost like a producer of the show who's mostly unknown for the most part. You'll see him as a community member here, but you may not know just how much of the back end is going on with his help. So I want to give proper credit where it's due, of course. And he's a great person, so even if for any reason that generosity stopped, my attitude doesn't change. He's a great guy, and I'm so happy to call him a friend. And the same is true with many of you as well. And we're so lucky to have you here, and I want you to know, if you're watching this and you feel like you're a part of this community, then you are, and we are happy to have you. I have a Dell XPS 9510 that I've shown on this channel. When I first bought it, I upgraded the RAM and the storage. And it's white. I don't know if you remember it. And there's a few things on the Dell XPS line starting that generation that I've never bought another one since. And I haven't used it very much. Since I've owned it, which has been 2 or 3 years now, I think it's been 3 years, I've only recently started to use it. Basically, I keep it by the bed if I need to pull something up and I'm too lazy to walk downstairs to the office. Just pull the laptop up and do what I need to do. And the battery has been dying within about 3 hours. And I'm like, pretty sure this battery was at a longer life than that. And the thing about batteries is it doesn't really matter if you use them or you don't. They're going to expire, right? If you buy brand new batteries at the store, they have an expiration date. So you could buy brand new batteries, potentially, that have been sitting on a shelf long past their expiration date. And when you go to use them, they're half empty or totally empty, brand new, because they just sat too long. Car battery. You could have your car sitting in the garage. You never drive it. Your car battery is still going to need to be replaced in a couple of years, depending on where you live. It could be 2 years, 4 years. Every once in a while, someone gets longer battery life. But overall, on average, it doesn't matter if you drive your car every day or you start it up once a month. You're still going to have to replace that battery around the same time. When it comes to laptop batteries, they're the same. If you're somebody who's got a laptop and you always leave it plugged in, and then you're wondering, I never used the battery. Why is it dying? It doesn't matter if you used it or you didn't. So, guess what video is coming up? Now that I'm starting to use the laptop, the battery is already 60% gone. I'm pretty sure I should be able to get 9 or 10 hours out of that battery when it was new, I think. And the problem when you're buying batteries for laptops is they're no longer just a pop-out part. Now you have to open a laptop up, and you need to inspect what battery you've got. Because depending on when your laptop was made, the same make and model of laptop could have potentially different batteries in them. So just Googling, I have a laptop 9510, what battery do I need, is a bad idea. Because you might get the right battery, and you might not. So experience, experience, experience. Stop with the Google, open the laptop up, get your camera phone, get a digital or whatever you got, get a pen and paper, and on the battery is a model number. No, I don't care what Google says. I don't even care what Dell says. I care what's actually in the laptop I have. There's a model number. When it comes to buying batteries, do not buy the cheap no-name brand batteries off anybody. I don't care if it's Amazon, unless you don't mind your house catching on fire potentially. You might get a good battery. You might get a good battery for 3 months. You might get a good battery for the next 3 years. You're rolling the dice. And when it comes to batteries, and when it comes to a $2,000 laptop, this isn't something I'm playing around with. If I go to Dell and buy the battery, I know it's overpriced. I know Dell's going to charge me $100 to $110 for this battery. Amazon is going to offer me a knockoff for 40 or 50 bucks. One's too expensive, one's too cheap. So my search as a tech, I'm telling you the secret, and this doesn't guarantee I'm not going to get ripped off, but I type in the battery number followed by the word genuine, authentic. Hit enter, and hit the shopping tab, or go to eBay. eBay's been a great source for me for genuine, authentic batteries. I am not buying a used battery. People on eBay will sell them used. Forget about it. That's like buying a used can of soda. No, thank you. Then you're going to see a lot of knockoff batteries. They look the same, but they don't say Dell on them. So this is supposed to be a genuine, authentic Dell battery, the same one I would get from Dell for $70. With tax, I think it was $74, which is cheaper than the $100 to $110 Dell wanted, and a little bit more than rolling the dice on Amazon for some Chinese brand that might blow up and smoke and catch fire. Or maybe it's fine. Again, not a risk I want to take on a $2,000 laptop. Maybe on a $600 laptop, but then it's still a $400,000, $500,000 building it's going to burn down potentially. just to save $20? Really? But it's still possible somebody has counterfeited the battery and put the Dell label on it and claims it's genuine. And so it's that reason I'm looking at seller feedback. Where is the battery shipping from? Is it coming from China? That's a big no-no for me, not buying it. It could say Dell, genuine. I don't want to wait 3 weeks for it to arrive and have absolutely no way to return it for any reason. Batteries are difficult to ship back because of their volatility. If I buy it from Amazon, it's still not as easy to return. It's got to go in a special box with a label that it's a battery, so it has special handling. And again, the truck that carries it could burn down, or that big transport that had all the Volkswagens on it in the ocean caught fire and sunk with so many $1 million worth of cars because one of them caught fire. When a lithium-ion battery catches fire, good luck putting it out. It's pretty rough. So I'm looking at seller feedback. They've got to be in the United States and preferably on my side of the US. We've got a lot of sketchy sellers out of New York selling these authentic batteries. And I'm going to wait longer because to go from New York to Phoenix is a long way across the country. Instead, I want to find somebody closer to me so I can get it sooner. And if I have to return it for any reason, it's not going to take as long. And I want it from a seller that has a lot of reputation, good reputation on eBay, if I'm buying it from eBay. And if all of this is too much work, pay the extra $25 and just buy it from Dell. I'm telling you, this is not worth $20 on a $2,000 laptop to buy the cheapest battery that could set your house on fire and destroy your laptop. At the very least, it could destroy your laptop. Or it works great for 3 months and then you're back to a 3-hour battery life. So now you got to replace the battery again. And at this point, it would have been cheaper and less labor intensive for you to just simply buy the right battery from the proper source to begin with. If it's a $300 laptop, it may not even be worth replacing the battery, even if the battery is $50 from any source. You may be better off just buying a new laptop. Because by the time your battery fails, if it's a factory battery, your laptop should be at least 3 years old. And if it was a $300 laptop 3 years ago, I wouldn't expect too much out of it today. That's just par for the course. You spend $2,000 on a laptop, your expectations, of course, should be adjusted accordingly. So how much money we're willing to put into something and how much time we're willing to put into something is very much a measure of how much is that thing worth. How much was it worth when we bought it? Did we get our money's worth out of it? Is it time to replace it? Because when you replace it, you're not only going to get a new battery, you'll probably get a much better, more efficient laptop that's faster, with a better screen and under warranty. But you choose your values. These are mine. And remember, if a client came to me with this Dell XPS and wanted a battery, I would advise the client that they could get the Dell battery, which is my #1 choice for liability and support reasons. But I would be willing to put a genuine battery that's new from eBay from a local seller with a good reputation if the customer wants to save 20 or $25. But I won't do anything else. If the customer says, no, I bought the battery and I'm going to provide it to you, nope, too much liability on my business. I won't do it. I'm not going to make $100 or whatever the labor cost is to help a client who ends up hating my guts or blames me because of a fire. No, that'll put me out of business and ruin my reputation. So the decisions you make for your home computer for you, they're on you. But I'm going to advise you the same way I advise my customers. And now you have the information and you can choose the right path with proper expectations. Planet Cryos is $2 in Super Chat. He says he left to eat and I'm still on. Man, you missed some good stuff. Or maybe I missed some good stuff. What'd you eat? All right. Just looking through the chat here. Everybody's going to eat. I think that's a sign. Are you hungry, Mara?
I?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Mark Roberts said the thermal junction on this Ultra 9 is 105. Something was reminding me. I thought it was 105. We're still 11 degrees away from that. I'd like to be at least 15. That's a personal preference. Like I said, we're still okay here. Just that one core is so much hotter than everything around it. It's very strange. Gary wants to know, is XMP off? XMP off. XMP should be off by default. And I want to underscore the word should. I never looked because every motherboard I've ever worked on, when it's brand new but default settings, leaves it off. XMP, if everything's running good, then go ahead and turn XMP on. And that way, if you have any problems, you know it was the XMP that caused them. So that's why we don't turn all that stuff on until we have a solid platform, because it's all extra. It's not required for boot up and for PC functionality. And we need to ensure basic PC functionality in order to reduce any diagnostic time should problems arise. Now, is the ProArt board different in that way? Probably not. We'd have to go and look, but I don't expect XMP will be on. What would happen if we swap the RAM sticks just to see if this RAM module's bad? Will Windows load? So the problem there is the blue screens were intermittent. It's not like we can make them happen. It's entirely possible that we swap the RAM and the system works and works, and then we end the stream, and then as soon as we end the stream, it blue screens. So there's no real way that I can, click on something and make it happen. So I'm not really interested in doing that because I think it's a waste of time. I want to run Memtest 86 on it. And with 48 gigs on each module, it's probably going to take 90 minutes or so per module to test. And we're not going to sit here for the next 3 hours on a live video watching Memtest run. But I will report to you the results on the next follow-up part 3 of this video. And at that time, we will also be introducing the 4 1 terabyte Gen 4 drives in a RAID 0 config. And in the meantime, anything I can learn about what's going on with this particular core, I'll report back to you. But I do try to film as much as practical live. But sometimes, like even when I set Memtest, I'm not going to sit here and watch it. I'm going to leave the room. I might go to dinner and come. It's going to run a while. And I could even set it before I go to bed. And even though it might have finished 6 hours earlier, it's just going to sit here waiting for me. The answers won't change. So this doesn't have to be expedited out. And we don't have to sit here and stare at it like watching grass grow. It's a very impractical thing to show live. So we will follow up with what our results are on these lengthy tests. And then anything I learn as well, I'll share with you. And of course, if you find out anything that you think might be helpful, please leave it in the comments section below. And that'll wrap it up for me for today. Another shout out to our friends, Buster, Peter Laycock, Mark Gaines, of course, to all of our members, to Mara in the background doing all of the administrative work, the thumbnails, the video descriptions, answering your emails. Thank you, of course, to our friends at SCD Keys and Acronis and RoboForm for supporting us here. Thanks to all of you for supporting us here. And one more time, I just want to look, because we had, I can't remember what happened 10 minutes ago. More time with that very generous Amazon gift card. Bad carry. It's a generous thing. How can you forget? What can I say? I'm a moron. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Buster. Thank you. Hold on, there's another one. Mark Gaines. If I'm leaving anyone out, I feel terrible. Again, you guys are absolutely critical to the future of this channel, and I can't thank you enough for your generosity, but also for everybody in the chat. No matter if you're green or blue or white, as a member of the community, we cherish you, and we thank you so much for being a part of this big family we've created here online. And Without you guys, it'd be very little motivation for me to film this stuff. Like, I would just be working. The fact that I can turn a camera on and I can evaluate parts while at the same time sharing it with you, or in this case, evaluating parts I never would have evaluated, quite frankly, not yet, because I don't have a need, well, Mara has a need for it. I don't have a need for this yet, but we have the opportunity thanks to you guys. And then we get to share that experience together. And I love it. I hope you love it as much as I do. That's going to wrap it up for me for today. I will probably be back live again tomorrow. I've got so much work to catch up on, but not with this. This has to get moved aside. We have more things to do. I've got the battery upgrade that I told you about. I've got the Minisform G7 Ti that's sitting in a box just beyond my reach. I want that so bad. I'm so excited for this 4070 graphics card and a little slim mini PC. It's a 14900 processor. Oh, I am sacrificing for you because that should be out on the box and I should be using it. But I am exercising discipline, and I will wait until you join me and we will experience the unboxing for the very first time together. That's probably going to be on Tuesday. Monday, we always do members only videos. So for the members, I hope you'll see me Monday at 1 o'clock. And then all next week, we are all booked up. So we have so much content and a variety of content coming at you. All thanks to you guys. We'll see you next time. And until then, bye for now.